All right. That should be everything. I'll refill my water real quick, and then we'll get right to it. Okay. Got my water. The rest of my coffee. I am ready to have a good morning. All right. Hope you all are having a good day so far. This is probably going to be the last stream of Shibuya. See where our new hour block here is 2 hours long. We're down to 3 characters, and one of them we can't even play yet. So it started us on Kano here, so I think we're going to start with him. Let's see where this takes us. Kano's cell phone rang. He saw Kuze's name on the display. Kano speaking. The hell are you doing? The director's voice was shrill with irritation. What's the situation with Maria Osawa? I have her in custody, sir. We need to get her into quarantine immediately. I'll send a counter-NBC terrorism unit to pick her up. Hello, Will Baron. Welcome to the stream. Hope you're having a good day. A public safety mobile investigation unit belonging to the Tokyo Metropolitan Police Department's Public Safety Bureau. The acronym NBC refers to nuclear, biological, and chemical threats. The unit not only gathers information and investigates terror incidents that make use of these means, but also deploys relief and safety restoration measures. I learned a thing. What's your location? Sir, the situation's a little complicated at the moment, Kano replied. He and Stanley made eye contact. Kano gave him a knowing nod. He knew what he needed to do here. He briefly informed Kuze of the plan to take Maria to the laboratory, but was careful not to mention Alphard. Please, sir, Kano said, bowing reflexively to the phone. Let me handle this. Absolutely not, Kuze exclaimed. There's no way I can allow that. Mario Osawa needs to go into quarantine right now. The act of placing infectees in isolation, such as in a medical treatment facility, in order to prevent the spread of infection. Wow! In case you didn't know what quarantine was. For viruses capable of airborne transmission, an airborne infection isolation room is sometimes used, which employs negative air pressure to ensure that air from within the room does not leak outside. Sir, please, just give us a little more time. Giving her the antiviral is the only way we can save her. If we put her in quarantine, it'll be a death sentence. Kuze let out a growl of frustration. Kano, that isn't your decision to make. Kano had run out of arguments. It was clear that Kuze's only concern was stopping the spread of the virus. The Q slur by YouTube Analytics. What? Yeah, you're not wrong. Director Kuze, are you just going to let Mario Osawa die? We can't put the lives of everyone in Shibuya at risk in order to save a single person. I know that, sir. So I'm asking you to please let me go to that laboratory. If it looks like we're not going to be able to hack the password, at that point a quarantine can... Kano! Kuze snapped. I'm giving you an order. And I'm not accepting that order. Listen, Kuze said. How many years have you been a cop? What do you mean by that, sir? Kuze didn't reply. Is this an order from up top? What's going on here, sir? Please, I need some kind of explanation. Hi, Evie. Welcome to the stream. Hope you're having a good day. This is probably the final stream for Shibuya, so I'm looking forward to it. Stop it, Kuze said. You sound like a child. This is dereliction of duty. Call me a child if you want, but I'm not following an order that I know isn't right. Kano punched the end call button with his thumb. From an objective standpoint, maybe Kuze was right. They needed to think about more than just Maria. If the UA virus spread through Shibuya, it would be a nightmare of epic proportions. Kano understood that perfectly clearly, but still, he looked down at Mario's face as she lay collapsed on the floor. This girl was still alive, and Kano couldn't stand idly by and let a living, breathing person die. He needed to save everyone that was in front of him. And hi, Henri. Seemed right in time for Kano saying A-cab except me. Right? Finally, the fabled good cop. Consequences be damned. He wasn't going to be the one to weigh the worth of someone's life. As he stood, still clutching his cell phone, Stanley gently set a hand on his shoulder. You did fine, he said quietly. Alphard is in possession of the UA virus. The people of Shibuya are already in danger. He may have already released the virus in the city. If he hasn't, he may do so at any time. Right now, what we need to do is get that antiviral and arrest Alphard. You made the right choice here. Thanks, Stanley. I appreciate hearing that. Stanley gave Kano a slap on the back. He was right. At this point, they needed to focus on things they could still accomplish. So, guys, Achi stepped forward. Who's, gonna take Hitomi's sister and Kanon to the lab? Mario was in no condition to walk, so they were gonna have to take a car. Which meant they needed a driver. I only have a motorcycle license, Achi said, and I don't know where the lab is anyhow. I should go with Maria alone. Kanon looked over at the others. There's no way of knowing for sure when she might become contagious. We shouldn't needlessly risk exposing more people to infection. She knelt down to gather Maria in her arms. In that case, I should drive. Oh, no, I know who that is. In that case, I should drive. Kano whirled around at the sound of a new voice behind him. Oh, never mind. I didn't know who it was. Tateno was standing in the doorway. You! Achi's face went red with rage. Alright, so that's how we unlock Achi route, is by jumping from here, huh? Okay. We have to prevent Alphard from releasing the UA virus. The CIA already patented it for future use. I mean... Stanley's like, yeah, we were trying to keep this one under wraps. I think it kind of got away from us, though. Oh, we got kept out. Okay. Shit, that's how you know shit's real. Well, let's jump over to Achi then. God, I love that. This game is just so charming. I really, really wish more studios would go this direction. This is... I also love how Minorikawa is just not involved in whatever's going on here. Ah! You! Hachi snarled. In the doorway stood the man with the cane. Detective Tateno. Tateno. Kano and Daisuke spoke simultaneously. Now at last, Achi had a name for the assassin. It was the name he felt he'd heard somewhere before. You son of a bitch! Achi roared. What the hell are you doing here? Tateno bowed his head profusely. I am truly sorry. You're sorry? Sorry don't cut it, man. Not after what you were trying to do to Hitomi. I'm gonna miss Dunachi. I don't expect you to forgive me, and I intend to turn myself in to be punished for my crimes. Before I do that, please, let me do what I can to help you. I think you've helped enough. Achi grabbed Tateno by the collar and drew back his fist. Kano moved to stop him, but Tateno held up a hand. No, it's all right. Let him do as he pleases. There was no trace of the menacing expression the man had worn in their previous encounters. Achi scowled, but lowered his fist, then released his hold on Tateno's collar. Fine. Hitomi's sister needs help, so we do need a driver right now. Make sure those two get to the lab and back safely. That'll make up for that punch I didn't give you just now. Ha! Thank you. I am so sorry. Daisuke stepped forward. No, I'm the one who should be apologizing. I'm the one who got you caught up in this. Daisuke, we didn't really grow up to be very good people, did we? Huh, no, I guess not. The two men stared bleakly at each other, shoulders slumped. In the end, Tateno said, I guess we were just trying to run away from our pain. Yeah, I didn't expect my own son to be the one to teach me that. Achi's turned out to be a fine young man. He is Kotona's boy, after all. Guys! Achi stepped into the middle of their solemn heart-to-heart. You can get sappy all you want later. When you're both in prison, I mean. Dad, once this is all over, we're gonna see Suzune, okay? Sure. Daisuke nodded heartily. Hold on, Kano spoke up, turning to Stanley. If these two take Maria to the lab, that just leaves the two of us to apprehend Alphard down at the scramble. Is that going to be enough? I mean, Alphard's not going to show up without a plan. The more people we have on our side, the better. And I doubt we'll be able to get any help from the police. Good point, Stanley agreed. Hey, Achi said. I'm here too, and I'm going with you. I'll keep Hitomi safe. Oh, look, good news, Kano. Now we have 3 people. Stanley let out a sardonic laugh. Kano frowned. Achi, I appreciate the offer, but having 3 people instead of 2 won't make much of a difference. When you're not sure of the enemy's exact plan, you really need strength in numbers. We could set up a dragnet like the task force did this morning. That'd be ideal, but... Come on, Detective, Achi said. Don't you have any idea what sort of approach this psycho might take? If I were Alphard, Kano mused, then I suppose my biggest problem would be figuring out how to get away after I'd taken Hitomi's blood. Stanley nodded in agreement. I'm betting he plans to involve the UA virus, he said. If, for instance, he tells us he set up a device somewhere to spread the virus throughout Shibuya, that prevents us from taking action against him. Achi swallowed hard. This guy wanted to unleash a killer virus in Shibuya? If he succeeded, then the town Achi had known and loved all his life would become a graveyard. Of course, that's mere conjecture, Stanley murmured. Quite frankly, even I can only guess at what he's going to do. His expression was grim.
Strength in numbers, huh?
Archie said.
She's saying we absolutely need more people. Is that it?
Essentially, yes, Stanley replied. But not just anyone, mind you. If it's not a group that meshes well, it'll hinder more than it'll help. Kano folded his arms across his chest. He looked perplexed.
People who mesh well together, huh?
Archie had an idea. He could ask SOS. If there was anything he could do, it was that. It was a selfish request. He knew that. Susumu would probably be furious with him, but Archie would just have to deal with that. Even if his old pals wouldn't forgive him. They understood that they'd be helping protect Shibuya. He was sure they'd step up and take action. After all, the whole point of the gang was that it was made up of people who loved their town.
Can you give me half an hour? I'm gonna try to see if I can rustle up some people.
I'm dying from Archie's voice. Kano straightened himself up. You think you could do it? Archie nodded assertively.
Just wait for me here for me, okay?
He said to Hitomi. She gave him a worried smile. All right, I'll be waiting.
It'll be okay.
Archie did his best to sound reassuring.
I promise I'll bring back some help.
Royal Elastics, what a brand. He knew where he needed to go. The pool hall in Ura Harajuku, that was his old gang's main hangout. Running at top speed, he could probably make it in about 10 minutes.
All right!
Rushing out of the door, with a battle cry loud enough for Kano and the others to hear from back inside the shop, Archie sped on his way. Is that going to be another keep out? No, okay, that's just how we hop back to Kano. Got it. Traffic on Dogenzaka was at a near standstill. Had there been some sort of major accident? As Archie ran along the roadside, he heard a middle-aged man screaming angrily. You gotta be kidding me. What do you mean no trains are stopping at Shibuya? The guy was red in the face. Calm down, old man. Archie ignored him and kept on running. Oh, that's who. It's Kano's fiancé and his prospective father-in-law. Sucks to be them, I suppose. Finally, he arrived at SOS's hideout. Two young men were standing by the door as lookouts. Archie recognized one of them. It was the kid whose so-called buddies had tried to shake him down earlier that afternoon. They roused themselves as Archie approached.
Hey! I need to see Susumu!
No can do. He's in the middle of something right now. The lookouts made no move to let him through. Archie felt a surge of resentment towards Susumu. If he'd still been with SOS, he'd never try to post members on guard duty like they were low-ranking Yakuza thugs.
Please, I need to see him. It's important. Just tell him Archie's here. He'll make an exception.
At the mention of his name, the two lookouts exchanged glances. All right, I'll go ask him. One of the lookouts headed inside, leaving Archie alone with the kid he'd helped out earlier.
Do they always stick you on guard duty?
The boy didn't reply.
Back when I ran it with SOS, we never needed anyone on lookout. We were just a bunch of guys who loved Shibuya and had fun time hanging out with each other. That's all it was, really.
It's not Susumu's fault that SOS changed, the boy said, somewhat fearfully. Lately, it's Kiryu who's been driving things.
Kiryu? Oh yeah, that guy.
Archie recalled his earlier run-in with him. The guy was an arrogant bully. Kiryu's planning to steal Susumu's throne.
What for?
The boy took a nervous look at the door before hurriedly continuing. He's trying to expand SOS's influence, and he's got a lot of people on his side. Right now, the gang is kind of split into two factions, Susumu's guys and Kiryu's guys. Finally, Archie understood what was going on. The gang members had all been acting so weird because they were caught up in some kind of internal struggle. Kiryu goes around recruiting new followers by force. If he doesn't like you, he dishes out punishment. This month alone, he sent 8 people to the hospital. SOS is a total mess, man.
That's all we were. Guys being dudes.
Yeah, just bros being pals, right?
This plan of mine might not work after all.
Archie felt a sinking sense of despair. If SOS was ravaged with infighting, it was doubtful they'd heed the dangerous request he had for them. But even so, I still want to be a part of this gang, the boy muttered. Archie peered at him in surprise.
Why? They shake you down for dues, stick you on guard duty? That's not a decent way to treat someone.
I look up to Susumu. He treats me like he would anyone else, even though I'm way down at the bottom. And it's not just me. Susumu always puts the members of the gang before himself. That's why I want to stick with SOS. Aha.
So that's it, huh?
Susumu really had been trying his best. And the members of SOS, some of them, at least, admired him for it and stuck by him.
Thanks,
Archie said. The kid gave him a dubious look. Archie didn't know if Susumu would help him out or not, but he knew it was still worth putting their disagreements aside in order to ask. The door opened and the other lookout returned. Susumu says to come on in. Archie nodded and strode inside. Keep out? That's going to be Minorikawa, I bet, because Minorikawa's headed that direction too. Alright, so let's jump from here over to Kano. And boop. Yeah, I am saving Minorikawa for last. What of it? Don't judge me. Archie's protests were vehement, but he backed down at last. Tatano would escort Kanon and Maria to the lab. That left 3 to try to apprehend Alphard, Kano, Stanley, and Archie. Having only 3 people was a dicey prospect, though, so Archie took it upon himself to head out and gather some backup. Tateno got the car keys from Daisuke, then helped Kanon pick Maria up off the floor. Kano watched him warily. There was no trace of the blood-curdling expression the older detective had shown when he was holding Maria at gunpoint. His face was that of a man with a responsibility, the Tateno that Kano had always known. Are you sure you're okay with doing this? Hitomi asked Tateno. You might get infected. That doesn't matter. Don't worry about me. All I care about now is helping you two if I can. He hesitated, glancing down at the unconscious girl he held. By the way, have Maria's memories come back? Hitomi tilted her head. Her memories? I suspect she took a blow to the head when she was abducted. When I ran into her earlier, she didn't even know her own name. Well, she seemed like the same sister I've always known when she came in here. Good. Then her memory must have recovered. Kana was shocked to hear that Maria had suffered amnesia, but it explained why she hadn't contacted anyone after she'd been set free. All right, then, Tateno said. We'll be back. Carrying Maria, he and Kanon headed for the door. Detective Tateno. Kano called out, then paused, tongue-tied when Tateno stopped. There were so many things Kano wanted to say, but he couldn't find the words for any of them. Once Maria is safe, I'll turn myself in. Tateno kept his back turned. The words were like a dagger in Kano's heart. Once this was all over, Tateno would no longer be a detective, but a criminal. Kano knew there was no alternative, but still the realization hit him hard. Detective Tateno, stop your dithering. But never lose sight of what you're supposed to protect. Ever. Kano snapped back to attention at Tateno's words. That was Dick Dictum, number 1. The advice that had kicked off the whole Dick Diary. I'm not the one you should be worrying about right now, Tateno continued. I'm so glad we got our Dick Dictums back right before the It had been a while since we had a fresh Dick Dictum. So I'm glad that we could finally get back to the Dick Diary before the game was over. We need to save Maria Osawa's life and protect the people of Shibuya. Kano bit his lip. Yes, you're right. Connor did his best to quash his emotion. Then we're good. Toteno gave a slight nod, then headed out the door. Detective Toteno! Just before the older man disappeared. Kano called out one last time. Be careful out there. Toteno flashed a hint of a smile, then left the workroom. Where would we be without our dictums? I feel like we need a full list of them at some point. There were only 30 minutes remaining until the time when Alfard had told them that Hitomi would be at the scramble. They needed to get ready for action. Is the surveillance camera system still up? Kano asked. Yes, Daisuke replied. It looks like what happened earlier was just a temporary hacking job. Then will you help us? Daisuke inclined his head. What do you mean? I'd like you to keep your eye on the scramble for us. If anyone suspicious tries to get near Hitomi, let us know. Anyone suspicious? How will I know it's suspicious? Like that organ trafficker who suggested you kidnap Hitomi, Mr. Endo. It's possible that he might be Alfard. Would you be able to recognize his face? Daisuke furrowed his brow deeply as he began entering commands on his keyboard. Yeah, I don't think I could ever forget. It's because of him that He left the rest unsaid. A moment later, several of the monitors switched over to feeds from around the scramble. All right, Daisuke squinted at the images. Not sure how much help I can be, but let me at least try to atone for what I've done. Of course, and thank you. Like, he's definitely going to prison after this, right? Conspiracy to commit murder or something? Daisuke's fingers flew over the keyboard, and soon all of the monitors were focused on the scramble and its surroundings. Then he carefully adjusted the angle and zoom for each of the cameras. Now the whole area was under total surveillance. All they had to do was get their stakeout crew to the scene. Where did Achi go? Kano asked Hitomi. I'm not totally sure, but I think he went to find some of his old friends. Hitomi sounded worried. Friends? Achi used to belong to a gang called SOS. Actually, he told me he was the one who formed the gang in the first place. What? Kano couldn't keep the shock from his voice. Achi was the founder of SOS? How bizarre that the two of them would wind up meeting each other this way. But I guess there was a big falling out between them, so I think he went to try to win them back over. Kano hadn't heard anything good about SOS since Achi had left them. If things had ended on bad terms between him and the gang, getting them to help might be, well, a lost cause. And even if Achi was able to gather some people up, how much would Kano and the others be able to trust them? It'll be all right, Hitomi said, as if sensing Kano's thoughts. I'm sure Achi will bring back some of his old friends. And when he does bring them, I'm sure he'll choose people we can count on. You really trust him, don't you? Yeah, Hitomi said without hesitation. And then a blush came to her cheeks. All right, then. I'll trust him too. It would take about 10 minutes to get to Endo Electronics. From Endo Electronics to the scramble. Kano turned to Stanley. Let's plan to head out by 6:50. Stanley gave no reply. He had withdrawn to the edge of the room where he stood lost in thought, his expression uneasy. Kano decided to leave him alone for a bit. Taking a sheet of paper from one of the desks, he began drafting a plan for positioning Achi's reinforcements around the scramble. Hitomi, don't worry, Achi will convince them with the power of bros, if you know what I mean. Cuts back to Achi. Bros! 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 All right, there we go. In about 5 minutes, he had drawn up a little map of the optimal places to deploy the team, and included positions for as many as 20 people Achi might bring back. Kano! Kano turned around, surprised to find Stanley right behind him all of a sudden. The American looked haggard. Is something the matter? Kano asked. You need to go to the scramble without me. What? Where's this coming from all of a sudden? Please, don't ask me to explain. Something else has come up, and I have to see to it. Sweat beaded on Stanley's brow. Whatever had happened, Kano had no doubt it was something major, and almost certainly it had something to do with Alfard. Stanley, Kano said. You know what? Let's let him do his thing. I understand. Do what you have to do and come back soon. I'm sorry. I wish I could tell you more. It's all right. I'll find a way to get by. Kano had a vague idea of what Stanley was up to. He probably felt he needed to keep things hidden even from his own allies in order to keep Alfard in the dark. Or at least, that was Kano's guess. This was no ordinary opponent they were up against. Keeping secrets even among friends wasn't necessarily a bad call. Kano, promise me one thing. Well, what's that? Once this is all over, you'll go have a beer with me. Sure. All right. Kano couldn't help but smile. That's a promise now. Remember. The promise these two made just now mirrors another made by a certain pair of brothers in the past. Once this is all tidied up, I'm gonna need a drink. Let's you and me have a beer together. That was what the younger brother said, and the older brother still feels the pain of that promise going unfulfilled. What? We get a Stanley arc? What? Oh. Oh, okay. Last second character swap. All right. And with that, Stanley hurried out of the workroom. Kano glanced at his watch. It was coming up on 6:50. Pretty soon they'd have to head for the scramble, but Archie hadn't returned. We need to head out soon, he said to Hitomi. You said 6:50, she replied. There's still 2 more minutes to go. Kano let out a tiny sigh. He shared Hitomi's fervent hope that the reinforcements would come, but not her confidence. If Archie didn't reappear, Kano would be left to protect Hitomi all by himself and to try to apprehend Alfard as well. Would he be able to pull it off if it came to that? You know what? If Archie's bringing back up, he'll probably bring him right there, right? So he just had to trust himself to see things through on his own. He decided to head to the scramble with Hitomi right away. This wasn't about whether he could or couldn't. He would do it. He had to do it. There was no time for doubt anymore. Hitomi, I don't like having to do this, but we can't wait any longer. Seeing the look of determination on Kano's face, she gave a tiny reluctant nod. There's the keep out. There's the keep out. Alright, so we're going to be able to jump from them to Stanley in a moment. But let's see what's up with Minorikawa. Hang in there, Chiaki. Just keep it together. Minorikawa rushed to her side and offered her a hand. Surely it hardly matters at this point. You're not going to make it on time regardless, Katayama said coldly. And in any case, if 4-star general gossip doesn't get released, it's Mr. Toyama who's going to be in trouble, not you. I dare say the world would be better off with one third-rate gossip rag less, anyway.
Shut your mouth, Jockey snapped. If the gossip doesn't come out, I am going to be in trouble. An article I've written is supposed to be in next month's issue. It's a piece I've worked my very hardest on to the very end. A piece Mr. Mino saw fit to put in print. And so if all that goes away, yeah, I'll be in trouble, all right.
Chiaki's legs wobbled as she struggled to get back to her feet. Chiaki, Katayama said, your zeal is a marvelous thing, worthy of admiration even, but when it comes to work, results are all that matters. I'm sad to have to put it that way, but I must be honest, it is just common decency. If Stanley wants to be a protagonist in Maria's place, we demand he put on the fursuit. You know what? I'd be surprised if the fursuit doesn't make at least one return before the end of the game. Katayama glanced at his pocket watch. You have 57 minutes and 10 seconds remaining. At this rate, you won't even make it to the interview venue before your time is up. Frankly, I don't even think a further extension of your deadline would make any difference in the end. Damn it! Minorikawa ground his teeth. He wondered if he should just leave Chiaki here and go interview SOS by himself. He could expand the article on SOS, then work a small part of Chiaki's interview piece into at least fill the layout. Right now, the single most important thing was getting the magazine out of the door for Toyama's sake. But if he did cut most of Chiaki's copy, after all she'd done, he might wind up totally killing her passion for being a writer. I have to stop waffling. Professionals don't let their personal feelings dictate their decisions. I can help Chiaki work through her emotional struggles later. Chiaki, that's enough. The young woman got to her feet, staggering as she began to climb the stairs.
I'm not giving up, she said under her breath. I can't give up now.
Though obviously in pain, she struggled to keep her legs moving. Damn, I can't do it. We will finally meet Alfard in just the fursuit, but with oversized sunglasses, right? I mean, given how this game works, right, it's going to be a character we met very early on, right, that showed up for like 2 scenes and then left. So, who haven't we seen since the beginning of the game? How hard she's fighting to stay in the game. I can't tell her I don't need her article now. Releasing the next issue of The Gossip wasn't just going to save Toyama, it would save Chiaki as well. Minorikawa couldn't abandon either one of them. Which left him with a hell of a dilemma. He needed to make a decision. If he didn't stop wavering soon, they'd be out of time. But try as he might, he couldn't come up with a plan. Then he heard a familiar voice from behind him. If you're wondering what path to take, allow my taxi to be your guide. Yo! Taxi driver coming in clutch! Oh man, look at that shot! He gets a badass shot too, doesn't he? Minorikawa spun around to see Kimizuka standing there. Where to, sir? The driver asked. Despite his polite demeanor, his pride was obvious. Mr. Kimizuka, I appreciate the thought, but with this traffic... Huh, traffic! I see nothing of the sort. Okay, sure, but... Minorikawa was well aware of Kimizuka's capabilities, but the prospect of cutting through the chaos that currently filled the streets was more than a little daunting. And you know this town as well as I do. There's nowhere you can't go. Well, alright. What other choice do I have? I guess I've got to trust you. This will be my last request of the day. Minorikawa pointed down the street. Take us to Inferno in Uro Harajuku. Inferno in Uro Harajuku. The bar? Kimizuka quirked an eyebrow. Yes, is something the matter? No. Nothing at all. Hurry up and get in. As soon as Minorikawa and the others had climbed into the cab, Kimizuka tore off through Shibuya's network of narrow side streets. The passengers in the back seat jostled roughly back and forth to the sound of screeching tires. And Chiaki re-injured her leg or something. This is altogether far too excessive, Katayama murmured, wincing as his head bounced repeatedly against the window. To think we allow such inconsiderate driving here in this country. Chiaki, meanwhile, had opened her laptop and was somehow working furiously to finish her copy. The sound of her fingers clicking across the keys echoed within the vehicle. How's it going, Chiaki? Minorikawa asked.
Just a little more.
Her eyes were glued to her monitor, her face all seriousness. Kimizuka glanced over at Minorikawa. If I may ask, sir, what business do you have at the bar? Just a little interview. I hear the local gang called SOS uses the place as their big hangout. You're interviewing SOS? Sure, I feel it might be best not to get too involved with that lot. There was something about the driver's warning that seemed a little off. Do your taxi driver connections tell you what SOS is up to? Minorikawa asked. Originally, there was something of a vigilante corps in the name of keeping the neighborhood clean and safe, but lately I hear nothing but bad things about them. Those loan sharks had said something very similar. Minorikawa reminded himself that he'd better be on his guard. Katayama chimed in. And just how do you plan to go about interviewing a gang like this? That's nothing for you to worry about. I have a plan. Oh, and just what exactly is that plan? It's a secret. Katayama gave him a derisive grin. Clearly, he wasn't impressed. Minorikawa turned to look at Chiaki. She appeared too engrossed in her copy to even hear the conversation. I realize this will work, Kimizuka said worriedly, but do you really need to take such risks? Yes, I do. Minorikawa thought back to that look on Toyama's face. That look when he'd finally regained his confidence. He couldn't let Heaven Publishing go under. Toyama provided the canvas on which Minorikawa shared his art with the world. Thinking about it now, Minorikawa realized he'd always been chasing Toyama's shadow. Though it was galling to admit, that man had been the ideal that Minorikawa strove to live up to. That was why he hated seeing Toyama reduced to such a pathetic state. He wanted Toyama to remain indomitable, to keep busting down any and all obstacles in his own peculiar way. Still, Minorikawa wasn't about to voice these feelings aloud. He felt more than a little embarrassed to be taking it all so personally. You take on a job, you give it 100%, every time. That's what makes you a professional, he said. Wouldn't you agree? I do indeed, Katayama chimed in, but you'll have to demonstrate that 100% in the limited time you have left. Which, by the way, is 51 minutes and 30 seconds. And I will not budge in the slightest on that submission deadline. Please do keep that in mind. The man took another look at his watch. Got half a mind to break that thing, Minorikawa told him. Breaking my watch will not stop time. Minorikawa shot him a furious glare, but Katayama's composure was unwavering. The guy was unflappable, and the only way Minorikawa was going to be able to put him in his place was to meet his damn deadline. Easier said than done, though. He'd want to use 30 of the 51 minutes he still had to write his article. That only left him 20 or so to get the material. Kimizuka suddenly slammed on the brakes and the cab skidded to a halt. Minorikawa stared through the windshield in shock and saw a smallish, boxy minivan weaving erratically along the road. Whoa, look out, that thing is heading our way! Don't worry, sir, the driver replied. Just leave this to me. Keeping his cool, Kimizuka dexterously steered them clear of the oncoming vehicle. Wait, why is the van that exploded still here somehow? What? The minivan sped past, an eerily cold breeze wafted over the taxi. The vehicle is being driven by members of the Wandering Angels Theater Troupe. Oh, hey! Them! They're still in this game. They're on their way to return the dry ice machine they used in their performance to Endo Electronics. The machine is malfunctioning, continually spitting out white plumes of carbon dioxide. The troupe members inside the van are beginning to suffer from oxygen deprivation and are driving around Shibuya in a daze. Will they be able to make it to Endo Electronics in the end? The heck was that? Minorikawa asked. I'm not sure, Kimizuka said, but let's hurry our way. Nimbly manipulating the gear stick, he stomped on the gas once more. Here we are, sir. They'd pulled up outside of a dilapidated old pool hall. You're a lifesaver. Minorikawa clapped a hand on Kimizuka's shoulder. Just be sure to be careful, sir. Minorikawa nodded.
Huh, what? Chiaki asked, looking up. What are we being careful about?
Nothing, Minorikawa said. You just wait here in the car. You still got that copy to finish up, yeah?
Well, yeah. All right, then.
Chiaki frowned but resumed her typing. And you wait here too, Minorikawa said to Katayama. But of course. That goes without saying. Incidentally, you have 49 minutes and 6 seconds remaining. Minorikawa did some quick mental math. The half hour he'd already set aside, that left him 19 minutes. However dangerous SOS might be, he couldn't afford to hesitate for even a single second. Bracing himself, he stepped out of the taxi and headed for the pool hall. Minorikawa took a deep breath as he approached the grimy door. Here goes. He drew his leg back and gave the door a hearty kick. The mob of young men inside the bar turned as one at the sound of the door crashing open. Who the hell are you? Several of them started toward him belligerently. Just calm down and hear me out, he said. I've come to interview you. Interview us? What the hell for? These were hot-headed punks, all right. They seemed to be itching for a confrontation. Minorikawa felt like a punch might come flying his way at any moment. Then another voice called out from further in the back. Hold up, guys. It was a young man seated in the far back corner of the bar. His air of authority marked him as the gang's leader. That must be Susumu, then, Minorikawa thought. When you say interview, do you mean for TV? Or like a magazine? Mind telling us who you are? The name is Minorikawa. I'm a freelance journalist. I'm doing a magazine piece about young people in Shibuya. I'm asking just a few guys to answer a few questions. Here's the answer to the science question quiz from last time. It is methane! Woo, we got that right. Methane has been tapped as a potential new energy source to replace fossil fuels for atomic power, but there are concerns about its tendency to exacerbate the global warming process. It is extremely flammable. The methane produced by food waste has been known to cause garbage trucks to catch fire. Well, that's fucked up. Huh. Susumu sounded less than enthused. Just 5 minutes, Minorikawa said. What do you say? Nah. None of the best of moods right now. Go on. Get out of here. Right, Minorikawa thought. He's going to make things difficult. But he hadn't expected these troublemakers to just up and accept an offer to appear in print. Now was when the real battle would begin. Guess I'll just have to write my piece without your help then. Susumu took the bait, then shot him a look. Mibadada, yo! What's up with the science lesson? There was a callback to a tip from earlier in the game that was like, hey, here's a multiple choice question for you. What's the answer? Find out next time. And then we found out next time. That's it. That's all it was. Susumu took the bait and shot him a look. Right about what, exactly? Your little warehouse raids. Warehouse raids? Susumu raised an eyebrow. What are you talking about? Really now? You tell me you don't know your boys are dealing in stolen goods? SOS doesn't steal, man. You don't know what the hell you're talking about. Oh yeah? Why don't you ask those two over there? He'd spotted the two fellows he'd seen arguing earlier at the scene of the explosion. Now he pointed them out. Their faces betrayed their alarm. Susumu glared at them. Is this true? They averted their eyes and said nothing. I asked you a question. Have you been stealing stuff? After a long moment of surly hesitation, both young men nodded. You idiots! Susumu marched up to the two and without warning decked them both. How dare you sully the SOS name? As the two gang members cowered, he continued to punch them repeatedly. Okay, enough with the beatdown! Minorikawa stepped up to intervene. Let's get down to business here. I won't reveal anything about the warehouse raids. In exchange, you give me my interview. How is that? Not a bad deal, I'd say. But Susumu ignored him, continuing his pummeling of the pair. Whoa. Hey, nobody's gonna play nice with a guy who flies off the handle and beats people, you know. What'd you just say? Well, look at yourself. You're clearly not the cream of the crop here, kid. At that, Susumu's fists finally fell still. The rowdy bar went completely silent. Say that one more time. I dare you. I'll put your ass in the ground. The gang leader's eyes were red with rage. Minorikawa snorted, unafraid. Huh, that's the exact sort of line I'd expect from a total wuss who's all bark and no bite. Shut your damn mouth and get the hell out of here. Oh, this is hilarious. SOS's top dog is such a yappy little puppy. Susumu snarled like an animal. You son of a bitch. I am going to beat your ass.
Mr. Mino, I'm all finished.
An ebullient voice resounded suddenly through the air. Ebullient? Ebullient? Cheerful and full of energy. Originally, the term indicated a state of bubbling or boiling, so it's effectively a fancy way of describing someone as bubbly. Oh, so why not just say, like, effervescent? That's the same, it's the same word. Ebullient? 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 I'll look it up. It's probably ebullient if it's more like bubbly. Jockey! Minorikawa looked and saw that both she and Katayama had appeared in the doorway.
I finished my copy. Could you please look it over for me?
She thrust out her laptop proudly. Susumu stared in bewilderment. Who the hell are you?
I was under the impression you and SOS folks were, being interviewed.
Jockey broke off haltingly. Yeah, you're right about that. One by one, gang members started to close in around her.
Well, it's just, you look like you're really angry is all.
Oh, do we now? That's because we are pretty damn angry. Good grief, Katayama groaned. Seemed that getting your interview is quite impossible. By the way, you only have another... You! Shut up, Minorikawa snapped as Katayama peered at his watch. Just leave this to me. You two hurry up and get out of here.
No way, Chiaki said.
What? Wait, what? Why not?
Because I want you to read my copy, Mr. Mino.
She looked him right in the eye. He understood how she felt, but this place was too dangerous. It was time to get Chiaki and Katayama out of here. Look, you guys need to leave. I'll give it a close read through later. He gestured to the exit with his jaw, desperately hoping they would take the hint. Hey, we can read it for you instead, Missy. SOS members swarmed around Chiaki and Katayama. You writing some smutty novel or something? One of the young men reached for Chiaki's laptop, grinning ear to ear.
Knock it off. Don't touch that.
She struggled to resist. Leave the girl alone, you scumbags! Minorikawa barked. The young men in the bar stopped and turned. Susumu was quick to respond. Screw you, man. Who are you calling scumbags here? Any guy who raises a hand to a lady is a scumbag. If you're looking for a fight, you can fight me. Just get your hands off the girl. Minorikawa did his best to look unafraid as a couple dozen vicious gazes now turned back on him. Right, bring it on, Susumu said. Hey, someone go stand lookout up front. He snapped his fingers sharply. Get him. At the signal, Susumu's men quickly closed in on Minorikawa. It was like being caught up in a tsunami. He took a hard punch to the face and his vision went blurry. Before he could react, he was hit again, twice, thrice, with punches and kicks. The moment his first assailant paused, another joined the assault. 4 blows, 5 blows, 6. Minorikawa lost count somewhere around 30. A metallic taste filled his mouth and he could feel his consciousness fading. All the strength was being battered from his body. He couldn't even tell if he was standing on his feet or lying on his back. And then finally, he felt himself crumple to the floor. Even then, the beating did not let up. As he writhed helplessly, the young man kicked him in the gut over and over.
Stop it.
He heard Chiaki shriek.
You're going to kill him.
Did we just fucking die? Eventually, Minorikawa forced himself to go limp. Finally, the kicking stopped. Ah, crap, one of the thugs muttered, sounding panicky. Did we take this a bit too far?
Mr. Mino!
Chiaki rushed to Minorikawa's side, sobbing.
Please, she cried out. Answer me!
He held his breath and said nothing.
Mr. Mino!
Tears streaked down her cheeks, and she shook him desperately. Don't worry, he gasped out at last, holding up a hand to stave her off. She let out a yelp of surprise, staring at his battered face. He could feel blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. He turned his grisly visage on the gang members as he painfully rose to his feet. Abruptly, Minorikawa broke into peals of mocking laughter.
Mr. Mino?
Chiaki stared at him, aghast. He only laughed the harder. It seems he took a few too many blows to the head. The poor thing. Katayama averted his eyes, unable to watch. Minorikawa shot an accusing finger out at the crowd. Looks like I win this round. What? Susumu blinked, dumbstruck. Don't you get it? Minorikawa said thickly around his bruised tongue. What I'm saying is that you're a bunch of idiots. Now then, if you'll pardon me. Oh, I get it. Minorikawa was halfway to the exit when Katayama's exclamation rang out. You were planning all along to let these guys beat you up. Is that it? Minorikawa jerked to a halt, his shoulders trembling. You knew they'd turn down the interview. And so by letting yourself get beat up, you'd have something to put in the article, yeah? It's a bit bogus, maybe, but I guess it's one way to get material to fill your pages. Minorikawa broke into a cold sweat. Shut up, you idiot. But Katayama continued with his oh-so-brilliant analysis. You sure pulled a fast one on this gang here. I wonder what sort of headline your piece should have. The twilight of Shibuya's legendary street crew. Former vigilante squad, now a mere gang of common thugs. Something like that, maybe? Susumu stared daggers at Minorikawa. Go on. I dare you to write that up. Then we really will put your ass in the ground. He moved to block the path to the door, clutching a broken beer bottle in one hand. You moron! Minorikawa bellowed at Katayama. I was this close to pulling it off! Ah, well, that's a shame, isn't it? Katayama replied. Minorikawa rolled his eyes. Gee, ya think? Susumu slowly advanced on the beer bottle at the ready. Incidentally, Katayama said, you have 40 minutes and 7 seconds left. Good luck. Minorikawa hung his head. Was everything futile at this point? Hopeless, pointless, ineffectual, not to be confused with the word feudal, which refers to the socio-political system of the Middle Ages involving lords and vassals and fiefdoms. Ah, you got your ass beat on purpose. Simply brilliant. He's got some Disco Elysium energy to that, doesn't it? All right. Cool your jets. I'd say that's quite enough. Susumu stopped and spun around. Kimizuka had entered the bar. The taxi driver stared out sternly from behind his sunglasses. All the young men in the bar fell silent. Minorikawa and his companions exchanged glances. Oh man, you? Susumu's face twisted up in an awkward embarrassment. Kimizuka's tone was light and playful, but intimidating nevertheless. Well, hey now. That's no way to address your teacher. Teacher? Minorikawa blurted out in disbelief. Kimizuka nodded. Yeah. Until last year I used to be a teacher, but I got into a bit of a dispute with my school, so I moved on. These guys here are all former students of mine. Sorry that they're such a bunch of good-for-nothings.
Wow, Chiaki said. I'd never have guessed.
I thought since I wasn't their teacher anymore, it wasn't my place to butt in, but I couldn't sit idly by and let one of my customers take a beating. Kimizuka turned back to Susumu. This guy totally played you. Every last one of you. Susumu bit his lip in frustration. Still, it's hard to imagine anyone would want to take a beating from this many guys all at once, so it's hardly your fault for falling for it. Kimizuka had switched gears from taxi driver to street-smart mentor. You guys lost this one, he said. And for that, you need to give him his interview. No way, Susumu looked disgusted. Look here, kid, Kimizuka said. Let yourself save some face and help the man out. And maybe you won't come off as a bunch of total idiots in this article. He flashed an amicable grin. Well, you put it that way. Fine, all right. Susumu blew out his breath in resignation. Susumu, you can't just let yourself cave like that. The remark had come from a particularly nasty-looking young fellow who slouched on the bar sofa. Minorikawa recognized him, the kid he had encountered earlier that afternoon, wandering around with a wooden cudgel. You shut up, Kiryu, Susumu said. So what, you're just gonna let SOS make a mockery of itself? Kiryu demanded. The gang leader let an annoyed growl, but said nothing. And you still think you got what it takes to run Shibuya, huh? Shut up. I've already said I'll do it. Kiryu sneered sullenly at Susumu's outburst.
Mr. Mino!
Minorikawa was just letting us out a sigh of relief at being able to get his interview when Chiaki scurried back up to him.
Please, can you read my copy now?
Her face showed a strange mixture of confidence and unease. All right, he said resignedly. Let me see it. The proving deadline was drawing steadily nearer. Still, if the piece wasn't good enough, he'd have to make her rewrite it again. He wasn't going to compromise on quality. Bracing himself, Minorikawa stared at the monitor. Chiaki swallowed hard, so anxious that it was audible. Yep, still sucks. I also love how her laptop has all the frills on it, so that way you know it's a girl laptop. I mean, I know it's different because it's like, in a case like this, it's using that kind of visual language as a shorthand to differentiate her laptop from Minorikawa's laptop, and it's more like this is like a stage thing, right? Where you have to, where being able to read things visually very quickly is more important than like the subtler points of costuming presentation, but still. I love her pig sticker on the back, though. That's cute. Minorikawa gave the piece a fast once-over, then read it again more closely. When he was done, he closed his eyes, considering. Chiaki held her breath, waiting for his response. It's okay. She looked back at him blankly for a long moment.
Really?
It's really okay.
Is it really, really okay?
It really is really okay. Minorikawa watched in surprise as she broke down in tears.
Oh, thank you so much.
Chiaki bowed profusely. He gave her an affectionate little ruffle atop her head. She wiped at her face with her palms, scrubbing the tears away.
So I guess I never really told you what sort of articles I want to write and all.
No, I don't think you have.
I mean, I want to write socially conscious exposés like you do, Mr. Mino. And so to hear you say that an article I wrote is okay, that makes me really, happy, I guess. Or maybe moved.
Her eyes were still bright with emotion. Well then, really? It was actually another writer who took inspiration from his work and who strove to be like him. Minorikawa had never thought a day like this would come. It was a peculiar feeling. He'd always been the follower, chasing after interviews in order to be more like Toyama. It made him feel both bashful and proud that the skill and soul he'd honed might be passed on to the next generation. Having to constantly brush against lace while trying to type sounds like it could become a sensory nightmare at times. Right? Yeah, definitely. Right. I should be off. Kimizuka gave Minorikawa a slight nod. Minorikawa returned the gesture, but more deeply. You really have been a tremendous help today. I'm not sure where I'd even be right now if you hadn't been there for me. Oh, no. Not at all. I was just driving a customer around to where he asked me to go. Oh, that's right. I still owe you a fare. Opening his wallet, Minorikawa saw he only had a 10,000 yen bill. Still, now was no time to be frugal. Keep the change, he said as he handed it over. But even as he said it, Kimizuka was already handing him some money back. Here. I insist. The driver had already counted out the exact change in advance. You really are a pro, huh? Minorikawa took the money and stuffed it into his pocket. Remember when getting a taxi meant you had to, exchange money? I do. I remember that. And now you just have your fucking Uber app. God, sometimes I stop and just think about how drastically things have changed in just 10 years, and I'm like, fuck, that's weird. That's fucking weird, actually. Oh well. You really are a pro, huh? Minorikawa took the money and stuffed it into his pocket. Now you only need an app that breaks the labor market, right? Right? We'll meet again. Somewhere out there on the streets of Shibuya. Kimizuka pointed his index finger at Minorikawa's face. Minorikawa responded in kind. Where are we on the time chart right now? Achi should be showing up any minute, right? Yeah, there he is. After that, the interview with SOS went off without a hitch. Now that the tension was diffused, these were just a bunch of ordinary young guys. The juxtaposition of their appearance and their behavior would make for an interesting piece. So, about what you said earlier, Susumu said once Minorikawa had finished questioning. About how I'm not the cream of the crop. Oh yeah, that. I just said it to get you worked up. Don't worry about it. Well, just ask you what you really think then. How do you think I could be a better leader? I don't know. I'm not really the sort of guy who wants to stand at the top, you know? But I guess I can tell you two things that'll make things go more smoothly with you and your buddies. Susumu leaned in, listening intently. Forgiveness, and also trust. Minorikawa chewed over his own words. The events of the day replayed in the back of his mind. He'd forgiven Toyama for his faked suicide and trusted that he'd regain his reporter's edge. He'd forgiven Chiaki for her bungled interviews and trusted that she'd grow as a journalist. In the end, that's what it was that helped him through. Forgiveness followed by trust. Susumu grumbled softly. Forgiveness and trust, huh? Doesn't sound so easy. People gravitate towards somebody who can handle things when they get tough. With that, Minorikawa got to his feet. Now we've got all the articles we need covered. Chiaki rushed over to his side. Well, I guess we still need Mr. Toyama's piece. I just got off the phone with my office, Katayama said casually. It seems they've already received the data from him. Whoa, what? Because he really can get the job done when he applies himself. Minorikawa felt an inner surge of pride. Now then, he indicated Katayama. How much time do we have left? 30 minutes remaining, Katayama replied, eyeing his watch. 30 minutes, huh? Looks like we might make it after all. Chiaki, laptop!
Right.
With a beaming grin, Chiaki held out her computer. Minorikawa got ready to start typing. But then a young man barged into the bar. It's Hachi Endo. He's come to ask the members of SOS to help with the planned operation down at the scramble. The newcomer hurried over to where Susumu was sitting and promptly prostrated himself on the floor. Whatever this was about, it looked like a big deal. Who was this kid? The gang's feelings look decidedly mixed. I need people to bring a guy down. I'm here to ask for your help. I know I have no right to ask you this, but please, I really need your help. As Minorikawa listened to the young man's conversation with Susumu, he could feel his blood start pumping. It sounded like they were talking about the terrorist plot in which Shibuya had become embroiled. Hey, Chiaki, he said that. Did you hear that just now?
I did. I'm not sure I follow all of it, but it definitely has the whiff of a major scoop.
Minorikawa shot her a daring grin. So what's the play here, Chiaki?
We interview him, of course.
But we only have 30 minutes left, right?
We take 10 minutes for our conversation, use the remaining 20 to write up the piece. I'll help you out.
You learned good, kiddo. Minorikawa ruffled Chiaki's hair again. They both blushed profusely, gripped by a surge of excitement. Why are you doing this? I can't make any... Oh. Why are you doing this? I can't make any sense of it whatsoever. Katayama stood peering at them skeptically. You write up the piece you just did your interview for, you'll make your deadline. Why go out of your way to trouble yourself there? It's no trouble, Minorikawa said. I'm just doing what a professional does. That is all. Katayama let out a solemn sigh. He looked at his pocket watch again and snapped it shut. Well, if you want to consent about the time, then do as you like, I suppose. I'll admit you've made me quite curious to read this magazine you'll put it together. Minorikawa and Chiaki rolled their eyes as they turned away. Already they were making their way over to Susumu and his gang. The interviews aren't over until you have what you need. You refuse to let them be over. You spend every last second you have to do the best job you can. That is what being a professional journalist is all about. Minorikawa cracked his knuckles and sat between the two young men. Sounds like you've got an interesting story. Mind letting me hear it too? Is that going to be the end of Minorikawa's arc? I feel like he needs to kind of peel off. Yeah, there it is. Yep. I feel like his is going to end soon because he doesn't really have a role to play in the stuff going forward here. All right. So now that we've done that, now we can get to Achi's. We still have the thing where we can jump over to Stanley, and I don't understand why we can do that. All right, here we go. Boop. I mean, this game started with Achi, right? It's gonna end with this fucker, too. The door opened and the other lookout returned. Susumu says to come on in. Achi nodded and strode inside. The scent of alcohol and cigarettes washed over him. Susumu sat on the sofa at the far end of the bar. It was where Achi used to sit back in the day. What do you want? Susumu asked immediately. Achi walked up to him and then got down on his hands and knees. Huh? What are you doing down there? The hell is this all about?
I need people to bring a guy down. I'm here to ask you for your help.
The crowd around him flew into an uproar. Peals of mocking laughter rang in Achi's ears.
I know I have no right to ask you this, but please, I really need your help.
Just some guy, huh? Who?
He's an international terrorist trying to get his hands on some wonder drug for a killer virus. We don't catch him, somebody I know is going to die. And that's not all. He might try to unleash the killer virus here in the city.
Susumu burst out laughing. Is this some kind of twisted joke? You all right in the head there, Achi? The other gang members followed his lead, unleashing another storm of mockery. The laughter continued for quite some time. Achi said nothing. He grit his teeth and stared up at Susumu. He endured the ridicule and simply stared up at Susumu. As patiently as he could, he waited for Susumu to give the proverbial nod. Finally, the laughter subsided, and Susumu crouched down and got in Achi's face. Is that how you go about asking someone a favor? Susumu growled menacingly.
If you have a problem with me kowtowing like this, I can apologize some other way, all you want. But don't you care that I just told you Shibuya's in danger?
Achi's voice was unwavering. But face it, Susumu.
Oh, but face it, Susumu, isn't Shibuya the reason everyone here hangs out with each other? You're telling me you don't want to keep our town safe, then I won't ask you guys for anything again. I withdraw my request.
The two glared into each other's eyes. Then, before Susumu could reply, an odd man stepped in between them. Why would we jump back to Minorikawa? I guess we could jump back to Minorikawa if we really want to. Sounds like you got an interesting story, he said. Mind letting me hear it too? You again? Didn't you already get your interview? Susumu rolled his eyes. I think Grovels here might be telling the truth. The newcomer's face was all seriousness. It lines up with the information I have. Hey, Grovels, you got a second?
My name's not Grovels,
Achi growled.
it's Achi.
I'm Minoru Minorikawa, magazine reporter. And I know a bit about that stuff you were saying just now. The killer virus you mentioned is called the Uwa virus. That wonder drug is an antiviral medication, and the person you know who might die is Maria Osawa. Am I right? Achi was almost too shocked for words.
How? How do you know all that?
Minorikawa ignored him and turned to the SOS leader. Susumu, he said, something really is going down in Shibuya. What are you going to do about it, boss? Susumu bit his lip. He looked pretty conflicted. Sounds good to me, someone called out. Let's give him a hand. Achi turned to see where the voice had come from. It was Kiryu. You shut up, Susumu said with a glare. Break out of your rut, old man, Kiryu sneered. Achi here is right. And keeping our beloved Shibuya safe what SOS does. He slipped an arm around Achi's shoulders. You're okay with that, right, Achi? Me going against Susumu's orders to help you out? Kiryu's lips pulled back in a broad, unsettling grin. But first, we have unfinished business, you and I. I mean, I'm willing to lend a hand, even though you ditched the gang and all, but first we gotta settle our score, here and now. You understand, don't you?
Yeah, you're right.
Kiryu grinned hungrily. It's guillotine time! A bunch of the gang members started up an eager clamor at Kiryu's pronouncement. In a matter of moments, Achi was grabbed from all sides and hoisted up onto a pool table. A dozen young men held down his arms and legs, positioning him so his head jutted out past the table's edge. Kiryu brought out a steel pipe nearly a meter long. It was caked liberally with dried blood. Guillotine! Guillotine! What the fuck? I mean, sure. Guillotine! 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 The men of Kiryu's faction pumped their fists in the air, chanting madly. Kiryu licked his lips as if drunk off their cheers. Glancing to one side, Achi saw Minorikawa speaking emphatically to Susumu. Looked like the reporter was trying to talk some sense into the SOS leader.
Man, today is gonna be my lucky day. I get to take the head of SOS's original head.
Well, this escalated quick, right? I'm like, oh, this went places real fast. Achi twisted his neck to peer up at him.
Man, what point is there in taking my head right now?
Oh, my. You just don't get it, do you? See, if I send you to the hospital, everyone in Shibuya is going to know my name. And once I got that big-ass sign over my head, I'll be unable to untie this town under my banner in one fell... Unite this town under my banner. One fell swoop. Kiryu's eyes were crazed and bloodshot.
Then that's all the more reason for you to do what I'm asking. If you want to unite Shibuya, you have to protect it first, but if you think you need to take my head to do that, then go right ahead.
Even these guys were all like Kiryu. If this many of them actually showed up at the scramble, they'd be able to do far more than Achi could hope to by himself. The ultimate goal was to capture Alfard. Achi didn't care how they made that happen. He was just sorry he wouldn't get to see it through, to protect Hitomi to the very end. Okay then, Kiryu brayed. The gloves are coming off.
Go on, do it.
Achi braced himself.
Just make sure you keep your promise.
Kiryu raised the steel pipe high above his head. And then before he brought it down, he flicked the tip of his tongue from his mouth like a snake. You dumbass. I didn't promise you nothing. Achi strained in sudden panic, but his limbs were pinned down too forcefully for him to have any hope of avoiding what was to come. And then Achi fucking died. But the steel pipe never struck home. Just when it was about to smash into Achi's head, Susumu grabbed hold of it. The hell you doing? Enough of this crap, Kiryu. Susumu yanked the pipe from Kiryu's grasp and tossed it to the floor. Kiryu stood frozen in surprise. A vein pulsed angrily in his forehead. You guys too, Susumu added, glaring at the others. Let him go. The toughs holding Archie down cautiously took their hands away. Kiryu let out a red-faced cry of rage. But we've got unfinished business. Ignoring him, Susumu helped Archie slide off the table. Every man gets to make one request in his life that cannot be denied. Do you remember saying that? The words stirred up some bitter memories within Archie. Yeah, I remember. But you didn't grant me my request. No, I guess not. That's why I'm going to heed yours. No questions asked. Susumu held out his right hand. Susumu, you are. That'll make me the better man. Finally. Archie reached out and clasped Susumu's hand in his. Yeah, Archie said, letting his relief show in his face. You are quite the guy. Susumu cracked a tiny grin. It was the sort of smile Archie had seen all the time back when he'd run with SOS. Kiryu must be psyched if he could decapitate someone with a steel pipe or full of himself. Right? Like, holy shit. Suddenly, Susumu staggered and dropped to the floor, falling too fast to even cry out. Kiryu had snatched the steel pipe back from the floor, striking Susumu from behind once his back was turned. To hell with this, he howled like a madman. SOS doesn't belong to you guys. Not anymore. I won't allow it. Archie didn't flinch. SOS doesn't belong to anyone, he said. It's not mine, it's not Susumu's, and it isn't yours. We're just a bunch of friends hanging out and having a good time. It's the only reason we get together. Nothing more, nothing less. He turned and looked slowly around the room. Hey, you guys! Do you all get together because someone told you to assemble? Do you get together to follow someone's orders? No, you don't. Of course you don't. The bar fell silent. Archie could see the young men who surrounded him exchanging glances. They could tell his words rang true. Kiryu saw it too, and it made him only more agitated. Shut up! Enough with the warm fuzzies! Abruptly, he charged forward, giving the steel pipe a mighty swing. Archie managed to dodge the attack by a mere hair. If it had connected, the blow might well have knocked his head clean off. Wow, I guess, sure. Like, before they brought up the steel pipe, you thought they had an actual guillotine somehow, right? I mean, like, based, I guess? But for other reasons? He quickly backed away. What's the matter? Kiryu taunted. How come all you do is run? The pipe crashed down onto the bar top. Bottles of beer and liquor smashed and scattered. Come on! What's the matter, Archie? Kiryu slammed his weapon into the pool table, sending balls scattering across the floor. Some of them collided with Susumu. Susumu let out a faint groan. Smirking at the sound, Kiryu stalked toward him. Speaking of unfinished business, with a gleaming grin, Kiryu took aim at Susumu's head, lifting the pipe up high. Stop! Before he could think better of it, Archie was rushing for his fallen friend. You dumbass. Without missing a beat, Kiryu shifted his weight and swung the steel pipe at Archie's spine. Archie responded with a fast high kick with his right leg. The steel pipe connected hard with his shin, but it was Kiryu who went reeling off balance. Kea! Fucking love this game. Archie pivoted and put all his might into a straight, right into Kiryu's jaw. The blow struck home. Kiryu's head snapped back and he crumpled to the floor. There was a momentary hush of indrawn breath. Then the bar erupted in wild clamor that practically shook the whole building. All eyes were fixed on Archie, marveling at what they had just seen go down. Sounds like folks were hoping for a little more of a fight. Susumu got to his feet, his left hand clutching his right shoulder. You all right? Archie asked. Mostly. Guess my shoulder took the brunt of the blow. The gang members from Kiryu's faction rushed to their unconscious leader's side. Archie shot them a steely glare, and they gathered up Kiryu and dragged him out of the bar. I didn't go too far here, did I? Archie asked Susumu. Is this gonna cause trouble for you? No, I figured Kiryu would pull something like this eventually. It was just a question of when. Right. I'm sure he's gonna go gather up his own bunch after this. We'll probably wind up butting heads again. Susumu didn't sound especially eager for that fight, but he didn't sound especially afraid of it either. Archie was still worried about a few things, but his friend had clearly grown as a leader. Anyhow, back to that story about you needing some manpower. Will the guys here be enough? There were around 30 gang members still in the bar. Archie looked each of them in the eye in turn. Some he knew from back in the day, while others were fresh faces.
I was born and raised in this town, and I'm fond of the friends I met here. This has always been a great place to have a good time. And today, right here in this town, I met someone who's very special to me. And I know this doesn't involve the rest of you, but I'm willing to protect her.
Archie knew he wasn't doing a great job of getting to the point, but the members of SOS listened quietly.
And so it's like,
He felt like a grade schooler who didn't know how to answer a difficult question. He fussed with his hair and frowned sheepishly.
Okay, so I'm not sure how to really put this, but Shibuya is a special town to me because of getting to meet people like that. And maybe, it's that for you guys too? Don't you love Shibuya? So help me help out this town.
He bowed low and deep.
I want to protect this girl who means so much to me, and the city that means so much to me as well.
I know my answer. Susumu clapped a hand on Archie's shoulder. Listen up, everyone. SOS's original founder is back in action. He needs our help, and I, for one, am ready to follow him into battle. What do you say? Susumu's people let out a hearty cheer. When Archie marched back into his home, followed by 30 members of his old gang, Hitomi and Kano were obviously overjoyed to see him. Oh, cool, now we can jump back to Kano. Their happiness raised his own spirits unexpectedly high. He felt a palpable sense of accomplishment.
All right, detective, let's do this!
His resounding cry echoed throughout the workroom, and the gang set out for the scramble.
What's the matter?
Hitomi asked Archie as they made their way through the busy streets.
What's the matter with what?
You look pretty pale.
She peered good and hard into his face.
Do I now?
Are you tired or something? I mean, you've kind of been going all out all day long after all.
Nah, it's nothing.
Archie kept his voice nice and bright.
I'm just a little hungry is all. So don't worry about me. Or I'll fart either, okay? I swear I'll keep you safe, Hitomi.
All right.
Hitomi gave a tiny nod.
Just leave it to me. Alphard's got nothing on this guy.
He thumped his chest in a display of bravado, but he could feel the sweat beading on his brow. When they reached the scramble, Archie took his place at the location specified by the battle plan that Kano had drawn up. Hitomi was only a few meters away. Whatever happened, he was in a good position to shield her from harm. There were 3 minutes left until the appointed rendezvous. Archie wondered what sort of person was going to show up. Still, he knew he couldn't scan the crowd too much. He needed to act as naturally as possible so Alphard wouldn't be suspicious. He risked a glance over to Hitomi. Maybe now wasn't the time for admiring, but he couldn't help but think about how cute she looked. In some ways, seeing her there felt similar to when he'd first seen her that morning, in the very same spot. The difference was that, this time, it wasn't just Hitomi's good looks that made him find her so attractive. They might have only spent a few hours together, but in that time he'd learned a lot about her as a person. He knew that what was important to her, what her worries were, her wants and desires. And also he'd learned what a kind-hearted person she was. Archie recalled what had happened back in the workroom. Even though her own life had been in danger all day, Hitomi had shed tears for his father and sister. She really understood people's grief and suffering.
What do I do if I can't protect someone as good as her?
Archie muttered under his breath, clutching his right leg. His shin was throbbing wickedly where the pipe had smashed against it. He'd been okay walking so far, but any intense fighting in the leg just might give out. But he couldn't let himself worry about that now. If it came down to it, he'd be a human shield to protect Hitomi if he had to. Archie looked at his watch. Only 1 minute to go before 7 p.m. He glanced again at Hitomi and saw her eyes widen with surprise. Quickly, he followed her gaze across the plaza. He spotted a tall, white man approaching. Hitomi, luring out a dangerous bioterrorist and weapons dealer and potentially putting her life on the line. Archie,
Damn, she's cute.
right? All right, so final guess. Who is our, who's Alphard gonna be? Is it gonna be someone we haven't met yet, or is it gonna be someone we've seen? Put your guesses in now. How come there's a Stanley route? How do we unlock Stanley? I saw that we could jump over to him, but, like, how do we unlock him? Are we going to figure out what he's up to after finishing Kano's route, too, or... Hitomi, I don't like having to do this, but we can't wait any longer. Seeing the look of determination on Kano's face, she gave a tiny, reluctant nod. Her shoulders began to tremble. Hitomi, I'll be all right. I'm just a little nervous, that's all. She had a right to be nervous. Alfar was after the antiviral that she had in her bloodstream. TFF is not wrong, but it's still funny, right? Like, yeah, I guess. It's just like time and a place, bro. Once he had it, Hitomi would become a liability that he'd want to dispose of. And right now, the only person who could keep her safe was Kano. He clenched his jaw tight and tried to look confident. Please, just try to relax. I'll protect you with my life if I have to.
Protecting Hitomi is my job.
Achi, you're back.
I said I'd see you through to the very end, didn't I?
Yeah, you did.
Hitomi gazed back at Achi with grateful reassurance. Ahem. Kano cleared his throat softly, but Achi and Hitomi continued to stare earnestly at one another. Eventually, the tough-looking young man standing behind Achi spoke up. I've got 30. Will that be enough? Yeah, Kano nodded. That'll be fine. More importantly, have you heard what we'll be doing yet? Catch the bad guy, keep Shibuya safe. Same old thing we always do. The guy flashed a grin. You got it, Kano said. They'd be counting on you then. With 30-odd people at their disposal, they'd be able to encircle the meeting area no problem. The preparations were all set. It was time to confront Alfard at last.
All right, Detective,
Achi shouted.
let's do this.
Kano gave a firm nod. Nine minutes later, 6:59 p.m., Kano and the others were in position around the scramble. Each subtle tick of the second hand was like a sharp prod to Kano's nerves. His whole body was stiff with tension. They could not let themselves fail. There was too much at stake. Here, now, hundreds of thousands of lives were on the line. Yo, FMV time! It should be on lockdown. The area around the scramble had been seized by panic, and there had been multiple traffic collisions. The sidewalks were crowded with scared people. Overturned cars and abandoned motorcycles clogged the streets. Amidst the chaos, emergency vehicles sped by at furious speeds, but the fire and emergency personnel and even the police were short-handed, and the whole of Shibuya had begun to look like a war zone. The main roads had been blocked to normal traffic, and trains weren't stopping at the stations. In effect, the city was in a state of complete shutdown. Kano glanced again at his wristwatch. 6:59 p.m. 10 seconds. 11 seconds. 12 seconds. 13 seconds. 14 seconds. He scarcely remembered to breathe. Hitomi stood in front of the statue of Hachiko. She wasn't carrying an attaché case this time, but the moment was otherwise a strange mirror of the stakeout at 10 o'clock that morning. Yo, FMV! Hell yeah! She looked terrified. Kano couldn't blame her. The criminals weren't after some case full of money this time. This time they were out for blood. Her blood. Yeah! Okay, that's good shit right there. That is... Someone in the writer's room was like, hold on, everyone. Hold on, everyone. I've got a fucking banger for this scene. Oh, good shit. Kano did a slow scan of the area. Achi was standing not too far away. His companions were strewn about here and there, carrying on as normal. Here in Shibuya, those guys fit right in with the crowd, and they had the area around Hitomi completely surrounded. Yet again, Kano looked at his wristwatch. 6:59 p.m. 35 seconds. 36 seconds. 37 seconds. 38 seconds. 39 seconds. He forced himself to take several deep breaths. He focused on the sound of his own heartbeat and exhaled until all the breath was expelled from his lungs. And then it all started. Kano's cell phone rang. I've got him. It was Daisuke, the organ trafficker who devised the kidnapping. It's him. Where is he? Kano asked. Is he close by? I've got him on camera now. He's on the other side of the intersection. Kano looked out across the scramble. There were so many people that it was hard to tell who was or wasn't suspicious. Can you describe him for me? The tall foreign guy. The one wearing glasses. A tall foreigner. Kano's eyes drifted over the crowd. This game is good. This game is great. This game is fucking awesome. Yo, wait, no! It's fucking Leland? It's fucking Leland? Do you remember this guy from, like, episode 2? Or whatever? Like he showed up for a little bit in the very early morning and then just fucked off, I guess. Hi, Raina. It in fact rules. It does fucking rule. I love this game so much. Oh, man. Haha. There he was. And as he got closer, Kano's eyes went wide. This man was someone he'd met before. Leland Palmer, the lecturer from the English department at Hitomi and Maria's school. Is he Alphard? Palmer was walking right toward Hitomi. Hitomi didn't seem to have noticed him yet. When Kano glanced back at his wristwatch, it was 7 p.m. on the dot. When Hitomi realized Palmer was approaching her, she was too stunned to react. He walked directly up to her, the corners of his mouth curling up into a smile. Hello, Hitomi, he said in English. How are you doing?
Professor Palmer, what are you doing here?
Hitomi's voice came out in an anxious squeak. Why, I'm here to take your blood, of course. This time he spoke Japanese and with an easy fluency totally different from his usual manner of speech. There's no non-zero chance he would be into bioterrorism and arms dealing. True! He wears a turtleneck under his jacket, absolute villain behavior. You know what? You are absolutely right about that. I'm the one who injected you with the Ula virus, after all. I'd been waiting so long for the opportunity to arise. It's been quite agonizing, you know. Spending 6 months and more pretending to be a mild-mannered English lecturer.
Professor, you're Alphard, aren't you?
Let's get down to business, shall we? Neither of us has much time. Hitomi sniffed.
Please tell me the laboratory password.
After I have your blood. So it'll only take a few seconds. I've got a device here that will make the extraction quite simple.
No way. The password first.
That would violate the terms we already negotiated. Hitomi and Palmer glared at one another.
All right, Hitomi said at last. Why don't you negotiate with Kanon instead?
Kanon? Hitomi took her cell phone out and dialed. The phone rang repeatedly and Kanon did not pick up.
What's going on?
Hitomi's face went pale.
Come on, Kanon.
Kano, standing near enough to overhear the conversation, grew increasingly anxious as he watched the pair stare at the phone. What was the right move here? Should he keep waiting? Let's hope Kanon pulls through. You had to hope talking with Kanon would work out. Kanon waited for this call to go through. But Kanon never answered. Had something happened to her to know? Kano felt his heart pounding. Now then, shall I take what I came here for? Palmer took a step closer to Hitomi. Kano reacted instinctively. Freeze! He drew his gun and trained it on the criminal. Nearby pedestrians scattered in fear. Seizing the moment, Achi darted in to protect Hitomi. Alright, so that'll get us back over to Achi's side, I suppose. Okay. Palmer let out a tiny sigh. So you're breaking the terms we agreed upon, then? I don't negotiate with terrorists. Kano inched his way closer, his point of aim never wavering. Hitomi, he shouted, call Kanon again. Again, Hitomi dialed her cell phone. Palmer opened the attaché case he was carrying. One more move, and I shoot, Kano shouted. But the terrorist ignored the warning, producing a set of small glass vessels from within the case. If you want to shoot me, then shoot me, he said. Assuming you don't mind this getting scattered about. Is that... Surely you don't need me to explain? Stanley was right. Alphard had weaponized the virus. Doing his best to conceal his horror, Kano tried to sound defiant. How can I even know that's real? It was entirely possible this was all a bluff. Ah, indeed, these could all be a fake. Would you care to test that theory? Palmer flashed a coy smile, holding out his fistful of vials. He began to tilt them slowly back and forth, letting them clink against each other. They were fake. No, maybe they were real. Kano couldn't quite decide. Should have shot him before he opened the attaché case. I know! And he couldn't take any rash action if there was even the possibility these were the real thing. Did you come here to carry out a suicide attack, Mr. Alphard? Hardly. I have no desire to die here. All I want to get is a little more of this girl's blood, and then go quietly on my way. But that all depends on you, doesn't it? His face was overflowing with confidence. Kano couldn't shake the feeling that something was off here. Something about this man's demeanor hinted at something. Well then, what'll it be? Palmer continued. Will you condemn the people of Shibuya to death? Cursing inwardly, Kano lowered his gun. Palmer flashed a triumphant grin, then resumed his stroll toward Hitomi. She stood frozen on the spot. Susumu! The shout had come from Achi. Okay, so that's another jump over to Achi. In an instant, a dozen members of SOS headed toward Palmer from all sides. Tough luck, pal, Susumu said. Turns out we're not actually innocent bystanders. Now it was his turn to grin. You're completely surrounded. Give up and tell us the password now. And just for the record, we ain't scared no virus. The tough-looking young man radiated bravado. By that hesitation, they closed in around the kidnapper. Around? Certainly don't look like police. Palmer cast a bemused glance around himself. You're right about that, Achi said. I mean, just take a look. I gathered up a bunch of people who love Shibuya more than their own lives in order to take your ass down. He kept Hitomi shielded behind him while he spoke. There's no escape, he declared. You've lost. Lost? Me? Well, it sure doesn't look like you're gonna get away. Palmer grimaced at Achi's words. I see. Then it appears that our negotiations are at a close. Enough of this high and mighty act. Susumu stomped aggressively toward Palmer. Hey! Kano snapped. Easy now! They couldn't risk a scuffle sending the virus crashing to the ground. What a shame. Palmer swung his right arm up high. Oh, shit! All the vials are shaped. Oh, everyone watched in dismay as his hand shot up. The vials he'd been holding sailed upward against the backdrop of the evening sky. Look out! Achi shouted. Catch him! Catch him! Rushing a guy who's holding a bunch of vials with 30 people doesn't sound like a good idea. Yeah, no it doesn't. Anyway. Were they explosives? A tremendous blast blew Kano off his feet. As he crashed to the pavement, searing pain shot through his entire body. He knew at once that a bomb had gone off. But why? It didn't make any sense. Alphard had no intention of carrying out a suicidal terror attack. Kano was certain of that. If that had been his intent, he could have just done so at any time without going through the trouble of putting on this whole charade. Was there some reason this guy would blow himself under these circumstances at this specific moment? As he lay dying, Kano had a thought. Could it be? Had Stanley not come to the scramble because he knew this was going to happen? We still can't jump over to him. Bad end. What's the hint here? There are no hints after 1600. Or after 1800, huh? Alright. Well. I guess we have to go over to Achi's side, huh? Was this guy Alphard? The man arrived in front of Hitomi and began speaking to her. Hitomi, Maria, even Achi's father, this must be the guy who was responsible for everything. Achi felt a pressing urge to flatten him right then and there. Still, he knew he couldn't blow his cover until Kano gave the signal. Suppressing his raw emotions, he readied himself for action. He hurt me and I'll hurt him back. That bill is going to come due. Protecting Hitomi has to come first. I can't let anything happen to her. Can't believe Alphard is doing bomb pranks now. Right? God, that's not how you do it, bro. Let's try the first one. He hurt me and I'll hurt him back. That bill is going to come due. Maybe if we take him out before... Why hasn't it happened yet?
Why isn't Kano giving the signal?
Freeze! Suddenly Kano rushed forward, his gun drawn. Ignoring the pain in his leg, Achi dashed for Hitomi as fast as he could. He cut in between Kano and Alphard, quickly pulling Hitomi out of danger. Hitomi! Kano shouted. Call Kanon again! Shielded by Achi now, she brought up her cell phone and dialed the number. But some time passed and there was no answer. Had there been some kind of trouble on Kanon's end? Looking increasingly worried, Hitomi tried calling several more times. And then Alphard withdrew some strange vials from the attaché case he'd brought. Kano's face wavered with alarm. This had to be the terrorist's trump card then. Kano and Alphard were having some sort of debate. Achi couldn't hear the specifics, but tensions were clearly running high. Kano hesitantly lowered his gun. So that jumps us back to Kano, I guess. Alphard flashed a haughty, confident grin.
It's time for our trump card.
Suzumu! Achi shouted at the top of his lungs. At his signal, the gang emerged from the crowd and moved en masse to hem Alphard in. Surrounded. Now the terrorist was visibly at a loss. You certainly don't look like the police.
You're right about that, Achi said. I mean, just take a look. I gathered up a bunch of people who love Shibuya that more than their own lives in order to take your ass down.
As he spoke, he made sure to keep Hitomi shielded behind him. The pain in his leg was getting worse and worse, but he tried his utmost not to let it show.
There's no escape, he declared. You've lost.
Lost? Me?
Well, it sure doesn't look like you're gonna get away.
Alphard grimaced at Achi's words. I see. Then it appears our negotiations are at a close. Why did he still seem so confident? Something definitely didn't feel right. He really doesn't care if he survives. Oh no. He was going to unleash the virus, accepting that it would kill him too. Alphard met Achi's eyes, and seeing the haunted realization there, the terrorist flashed a wicked and triumphant grin. Enough of the high and mighty act, Suzumu shouted. He began to stomp toward Alphard, but he didn't reach him in time. The vials in Alphard's hand went sailing high into the air.
Look out! Catch him! Catch him!
Achi gestured for his comrades to fan out across an open space. And then out of nowhere, a huge explosion blew Achi clean off his feet. His eardrums ruptured, and his world was engulfed in an eerie silence, as if time itself had stopped. As he lay crumpled on the pavement, the one thing that still rang in his ears was the tinkling of glass as countless vials smashed on the concrete. All right, so we have to find out what went wrong here. If I had to take a guess, I would guess that we can actually get Stanley to open up to us. Let's try talking to Stanley and figure out what the hell is going on with him. Stanley. Please tell me. We're past the point of keeping secrets. They'd come this far together. Surely it was too late to get all tight-lipped now. I'm sorry. I wish I could tell you more. Stanley dropped his eyes. Kano had a vague idea of what Stanley was up to. He probably felt he needed to keep things hidden, even from his own allies, in order to keep Alphard in the dark. At least it was Kano's guess. All right, I understand, Kano said with resignation. Do what you have to, and come back soon. With an apologetic look on his face, Stanley turned and hurried back from the workroom. Well, that didn't change shit. Okay. So I think clearly part of the problem here, right, is that we don't have Stanley's route open. Like, we have to find a way to open up his route. Otherwise... Huh. Huh. So the first jumping point we had was here, right? Was... Huh. What was this one? Is this like something where we have to like... Because I could see Stanley has a route. We can see that we can jump to him at certain points. But this is all just ending in a mysterious explosion. And something went wrong with Kanon, so we have to be able to, like, change that. But how? How do we change that? I wonder. If we go all the way back... God, look at him in that morning. When did we meet Stanley? After this point, right? That jumps to Morikawa. Okay. There's Stanley, okay. Huh. There he is. I wonder if it's something where, like, there's a bunch of incidental things we could have done at some point here that would have changed things. Huh. It's so weird that it let us get this far up into it and then just reach a bad end and have no way forward. But what else could we change? None of this stuff seems consequential, right? Maybe listening in on this conversation here would change something. Heck is going on? Archie felt compelled to stop and check things out. Calm down, Dad. The young woman with the man must be his daughter, then. How am I supposed to do that? You heard what the boy said. We have to get out of Shibuya right away. Whoa! Archie got a look at the young woman's face. She was gorgeous. He had a feeling he'd seen her on TV before or something. She was probably an actress, but he couldn't recall her name. Well, Archie muttered to himself, might be pretty, but you're no Hitome. Once more, he broke out into a run. There were a whole bunch of people walking in the direction of Route 246. Looked like folks really couldn't use the trains right now. Was this some consequence of Maria being infected with the flu virus? Then I'd better hurry. We're the only people who can fix this. Yeah! With another cry to pump himself up, Archie bolted down the sidewalk to counter the throng. Okay. Huh. Is that going to change things, though? That doesn't change anything. Huh. Well, I'll tell you what. We're about 2 hours in anyway, so I'm going to take a break here. And when I come back, I'll have looked up how we move past this point, because this is a real stumper. Y'all know the drill. Stand up and walk around for a bit, drink something, get some fluids in you. It is fucking hot over here, let me tell you. I've got my fan on here pointed full blast at me, and it still fucking sucks. I'll be back in about 10 minutes with a fresh glass of water, and we'll see if we can find our way to the end of this game. Alright, I'm back. Alright. So I figured out where we've gone wrong here. So, what we actually want to do here we want to give him so we want to go to this one. Before he disappears, I'm going to give him a silent salute. It's a breach of protocol to salute while in plain clothes and without his cap. Still, it was the best way he had to let Tateno know how he felt. I'll leave the rest to you. Tateno took one last look over his shoulder before finally leaving the workroom. And that unlocks Tateno route. Not even Stanley route. Tateno route. Oh. Yeah. Kyozo Tateno gingerly flexed his right elbow. It was still a little sore, but it shouldn't interfere with his ability to drive. Does that hurt? Asked the girl called Kanon. No, I'm all right. Good thing I didn't kill you, she said, her tone matter of fact. You ought to thank that younger detective. If he hadn't stopped me, you wouldn't be here right now. Is that right? Tateno looked over at Kano. He was talking to Achi and the others about something. Last time Tateno had seen Achi had been back at Kotane's wake. He felt a strong surge of emotion seeing how the boy had grown into a fine young man. Are you sure you don't mind driving? Kanon's voice snapped Tateno back into the moment. Yeah, it won't be a problem. Back when she'd attacked him on that rooftop, she'd moved too quickly for him to even get a glimpse of her face. Now that he was able to get a good look at her, he was shocked by how young she looked. And yet there was a cold gleam in her eyes, a glitter of awareness with no trace of emotion behind it whatsoever. In his long career as a detective, Tateno had never seen eyes like that before. It's a look he knew well. The look of someone who had killed, and who had done so many times.
I'm so sorry about all this. Please look after my sister,
Hitomi said. She bowed deeply. No, I'm the one who should apologize. Tateno would have liked to have gone on to say that helping now was the least he could do to atone for what he'd done earlier, but he stopped himself there. They've done the very best to never show Kano's GF's face, but I don't think it's going to become relevant at this point. They've showed her a few times, right? But I don't think it's going to become relevant. Yeah, I mean, now that you mention it, yeah, that has been a few times, but where they've like purposely obscured it. Nothing you could say to Hitomi Osawa could possibly earn her forgiveness. Silently, Tateno lowered his head. His subsequent actions would have to make up for his crimes. He had hope that this was possible.
Kanon, you look after my sister too.
Hitomi bowed once. You two know each other? Tateno looked at the two girls in surprise.
Kanon's my sister's friend, Hitomi said. I just met her for the first time today.
What a strange series of events could have transpired for Mari and Kanon to wind up as friends. Tateno felt a prickle of curiosity, but now was not the time for that conversation. Daisuke reappeared. He had gone to fetch his car keys. You know where it's parked, yeah? He asked. Same as back in the day? That's right. Over where we always hung out with Kotane back in grade school. All at once, Tateno was hit with a surge of childhood memories. Oh, we are not as close to the end of this game as I thought we were. If we're going this fucking deep this late, this might take another stream to get through. The sky was a piercing blue. The droning of cicadas echoed in his ears. A refreshing breeze brought intermittent respite from the heat. During summer vacation, they spent their days here in the parking lot behind Daisuke's house. As Tateno and Daisuke played near the stairs at the side of the lot, the blazing sun beating down on them, Kotane would always come along with some iced barley tea for them. The two boys would race to see who could drink theirs up the fastest. The cold and fragrant tea flowed down their welcoming throats. Most of the time it was Tatano who would finish first. Daisuke often wound up choking and spitting his out. Kotane would flash him a motherly and sympathetic smile, and then Daisuke would grin back at her sheepishly and fuss with his hair. That had all been nearly 40 years ago, but Tatano could envision their smiles as vividly now as ever. They were his only fond memories of his childhood. Tatano took the keys from Daisuke, clutching them firmly in his fist. "All right," he said. "We'll be back." He lifted up Maria and, with Kanon supporting her on the other side, began to head for the door. Then Kano called out to him. "Detective Tatano, There's a look of sadness in the younger man's face. "Don't let yourself become a detective like me." Tatano had the words right onto the tip of his tongue, but he swallowed them back down. It suddenly seemed petty to trivialize the aspirations Kano had held for so long. "Once Maria is safe, I'll turn myself in." After he made sure that Mario got to the laboratory, he would cease to be a detective and would instead simply be a criminal. In Japan, a charge of plotting to commit the crime of murder carries a prison term with labor of not more than 2 years. But despite the failures that had brought him to this position, nothing he had said up until now had been a lie. Of that much, he could be proud. Never lose sight of what you're supposed to protect. Ever. He could at least try to be the detective Kano had so admired until the very end. As Tatano left the room, Kano saluted him crisply. Ordinarily, a detective wouldn't salute in plainclothes or without his cap. The little breach of etiquette just showed all the more clearly how Kano felt. If Tatano hadn't been holding Maria up, he would have returned the gesture. Alright, so now we can finally figure out what goes wrong on their end. Leaving Endo Electronics, Tatano and Kanon carried Maria up a hectic Dogenzaka. The parking lot was less than a minute away by foot. Before long, however, they found their way blocked by a veritable wall of people. It was a riot squad with Kuze at the head. A police squad that carries out security and control activities in order to maintain or restore public order in the event of an emergency. The Tokyo Metropolitan Police Department has 9 riot police units, along with a support vehicle unit, for a total of 10 such squads. These also comprise teams that carry out certain specific functions, such as the Explosive Ordnance Division and the Chemical Defense Unit. Director Kuze. Tatano, what are you planning on doing with that girl? What are you planning on doing with her? I already informed Kano that she's to be put under quarantine. If she's allowed to remain in free, all of Shibuya will be in danger. Kanon took a step forward. Tatano could sense that she was about to move in for the kill. Easy now, he said softly. Wait. As skilled as Kanon was, she was no match for an entire armed police squad. I'm not going to take all of them on, she murmured. I'm just going to take the man in charge hostage. Tatano swallowed. Capture Kuze and then run off? It could work. Considering the time limit they were facing, he knew they had to find some way to force their way through here. Still, given how far they had to go to reach the laboratory, he wanted to avoid direct conflict as much as possible. Give me 1 minute. No, just 30 seconds. Tatano turned and stared at Kuze. The two had known each other since their rookie days. Director Kuze, tell me, what is it that you believe in? What do I believe in? Yes. Weren't you always the one who said that you needed to put faith in your subordinates no matter what? Well, yes. That's right. Kuze's eyes wavered ever so slightly. In that case, put your faith in me. No, put your faith in Kano. Kano? He believes that saving Maria Osawa will let us save Shibuya. He's doing everything he can to make that happen. Kuze's lips curled into a wry grin. That sounds like Kano, all right? I was thinking in such simple terms. Usually the simple answer is the right one, sir. People like you and me overthink things. We make them more complicated than they need to be. Yo, Nojoto, welcome to the stream. Hope you're having a good day. Just consider, for a moment, will putting Maria Osawa under quarantine clear up this case? No, it won't. So long as we don't know how she was infected with the virus, we can't rule out the possibility that other people have been infected as well. Tatano kept his eyes locked on Kuze's. Director Kuze, right now what we need it to do more than anything is to get our hands on that antiviral drug. We need to be helping Kano. Please, sir. Kuze furrowed his brow in thought for a few moments, then shook his head. Tateno, buddy, come on. I can't do that. You gotta understand the position I'm in. The director's voice squeaked into his childish register. Kano narrowed her eyes. What is this guy's deal? She whispered. It's... well, it's hard to explain. But when his voice gets like that, it means, He was confused. Now was their chance to make a run for it. Tateno signaled with his eyes to Kanon, then got ready to sprint past Kuze and his team. He didn't get the chance to, though. Ah! Suddenly, Kuze let out a pained yelp. Then, as Tateno watched in surprise, he proceeded to collapse onto the pavement. Ah! It hurts! It hurts! Have I been infected with the virus, too? Oh, fuck. The riot squad immediately rushed to the director's side. As Tateno stood there dumbstruck, Kuze secretly flashed him a knowing wink. That was a terrible performance, Kanon muttered. Yeah, but it was a tour de force as far as I'm concerned. Inwardly, Tateno gave his boss a nod of respect. Slipping past the riot squad, he and Kanon headed for the parking lot. Several members of Kuze's team hurried to chase after them. Don't follow them, Kuze cried out as he writhed on the ground. Everyone stay back! If you get too close to Mario Sawa, you'll be infected as well! The riot squad stopped in their tracks. Tateno and Kanon took the opportunity to hurry out of sight. Darting through some narrow alleyways, they arrived at the parking lot. The area had changed since Tateno's youth, but some of the old air of nostalgia still lingered. There it is. He spotted the minivan with Endo Electronics written on the side. Tateno gently laid Maria in the back seat. She was still apparently unconscious. Once Kanon climbed into the passenger seat, Tateno hit the gas and sped off. How far is it to the lab? Kanon asked. Normally it would take about 15 minutes, but with this traffic it's hard to say. Tateno avoided the stop and go of Dogonzaka, taking side streets as he headed toward Shibuya Station. Once they had re-emerged on the main thoroughfare, however, he spotted a checkpoint set up ahead. Barricades and armored vehicles were blocking the road. The scale of the security effort showed just how grave the situation truly was. Tateno hit the brakes. What do we do? Kanon spoke without taking her eyes off the barricade ahead. Oh, what do we do? Kanon spoke without taking her eyes off the barricade ahead. Tateno thought for a few moments before arriving at an answer. Let's find another way around. I have to find another way around. Get in the back seat, Tateno told Kanon. Why? I want you to hold on to Maria so she doesn't fall. A feisty grin came to Kanon's face. You got it. Tateno waited until Kanon had made her way into the back. Then he threw the minivan into reverse and jammed his foot on the gas. He cut the steering wheel sharply to one side, a loud screeching filling the air as the centrifugal force made the vehicle tilt. Then a patrol car came roaring out of a nearby side road. What the? Tateno reflectively jammed on the brakes. Police cruiser cut in front of the minivan, turning to head right toward the roadblock. Crashing into the barricade, it plowed on through, not stopping until it slewed up onto the curb beyond. The car's impact had made enough space for another vehicle to slip through in its wake. The minivan barreled on through the checkpoint. Tateno wondered who in the world had been driving the cruiser. Tateno's phone rang, and he picked it up as he sped onward. Slew is a word? Yeah, it is. Were you able to break through safely? Oh, no. Were you able to break through safely? It was the voice of Detective Kajiwara. Tateno had thought he was at the Osawa residence. That patrol car now. Was it you? A call came from Task Force HQ saying that Kano had found Maria. I figured maybe Kano was planning to take her to Akoshi Pharmaceutical. And so I thought he'd need to make his way through one of the checkpoints here. But the fact that it was you, Detective Tateno, now that was quite unexpected. He let out a weak chuckle. Kajiwara, are you hurt? No. Don't worry about me. Just, please, help Maria. I made a promise to her father that I'd save his daughter, no matter what. Tateno could hear the energy draining from Kajawara's voice. Understood. I'll keep that promise for you then. Thank you. The line went dead. He crashed headlong through that barricade. There was no way he'd come out of that uninjured. I'm sorry, Kajawara, Tateno said to himself under his breath. And thank you. He bit his lip, then stepped hard on the gas again. Oh no! Funny cop! Ah! Alright, we got keep out now. Okay. So now we can't make any more progress here. So what we want to do now is from Kano. We want to go here. Oh, nope, that's not what we want. God, this last bit is super confusing. Alright, so what we actually want here is to go to here. So now we can play more of Kano's route. Because now, this, Kano's route, Achi's stays the same. Up until that point where he has to keep out, but Kano's is different. So, this must be where we move forward from here. He squeezed his eyes shut, but still the tears have been holding back poured down his cheeks. We probably won't have to reread all this because it's going to be the same. A lot of it will be the same, but let's see where. Let's see. They need to get ready for action. Yep. This does all the same. So let's fast forward through all this then. Oh, we already know who Alphard is now. Okay. I wonder if we're going to jump to Stanley next. Because now that we've done some Tateno stuff, I wonder if it'll let us go into Stanley's route. I do wish we didn't have to replay all of this. That was the same text, but I get it. Since the end of this route has changed. Alright, here we go. Stanley. What's up, buddy? Stanley's thinking. What is he thinking about? Okay. Let's stand, do what you have to, and come back soon. I'm sorry, I wish I could tell you more. Alright. So this is... I believe this one gave us the option to hop over to Stanley. I wonder if that unlocks now. This is all over. You'll have to go have a beer with me. Sure, alright. Excellent. That's how we do it. Okay, okay. So we couldn't go into Stanley's route until we had done Tateno's route. Okay. Cool. Now we have Stanley unlocked. Let's go hop over to Stanley. Stanley Stanson. Why do we suddenly have 2 new characters in the last block of time here? It was 6 o'clock p.m. Alfard had contacted the motley team at Endo Electronics, and the situation had immediately deteriorated. But the new developments had also provided them with one big chance. Finally, we get to become a racist, right? Finally! A chance that Alfard might appear in person at long last. That was a joke, in case it wasn't clear. No, I mean, he said the thing at one point. You're not wrong. Finally, we can play as a company, man. Jack Stanley set his hand on Kano's shoulder. A weak smile came to the detective's face. Stanley paused, unexpectedly moved. For that one moment, he saw in Kano the image of his younger brother, Frank. Who the fuck is Frank?
Jack, you have to get everyone to a safe place right away.
Frank's nervous shout echoed through the hotel lobby. Stanley's younger brother was a member of the Bomb and Arson Squad, subsection of the Chicago Police Department's Bureau of Investigative Services that handles investigation of bomb and arson-related cases. Stanley Stanson is the Manly Manson, right? This was 2 years ago. The CIA had obtained intel that Alfard was targeting a high-class hotel in Chicago for a terror attack. Stanley and his team had searched the hotel interior and discovered the bomb set inside a large planter. When Frank arrived at the scene and saw the explosive, his expression grew grim. The detonation trigger is set in the worst possible place. It's going to be a bastard to remove it. In that case, you need to get out of there too, Frank, Stanley said. No, I need to make sure I can figure out how this thing is set up so the disposal unit knows what to do when they get here. I'll be alright. Look, you can probably see it from back there. Stanley could indeed see the small explosive from where it stood. It was held in place by several screws. The timer had just ticked down past the 13-minute mark. There's plenty of time left for the disposal guys to get here, Jack. I need you to finish evacuating the building. There are a lot of people who haven't gotten out yet, but, Stanley hesitated. From a cold and logical perspective, Frank was right. He had a job to do, and if Stanley listened to his personal feelings and tried to usher his brother out of here, a lot of innocent people might die. Just move the vase, right? Right? Just move it. Jack Stanley is the most CIA name they could think of, huh? It is pretty CIA. I mean, if someone tells me their name is Jack Stanley, I'm like, that is definitely a fake name, right? All right, he said, I understand. If we had something as simple as dry ice, we could just freeze this thing. Frank grimaced as he eyed the bomb. Dry ice, huh? I suppose ice cream would do the trick. That'd be a waste of ice cream. You're better off just eating it. Dry ice? Are we gonna need to get the fucking dry ice machine from the fucking, from the theater troupe? Is that what they're setting this up for? Of course, even dry ice would be a long shot in a place like actual liquid nitrogen. The brothers looked at one another, and for a moment the tension dissolved into laughter. All right, Stanley said. I'll be back. Hey, Jack, once this is all tidied up, I'm gonna need a drink. Let's you and me have a beer together. Sure, you got it. Stanley headed for the hotel lobby, which was still overflowing with guests. Isn't this a flashback, though? It is, but like, it's a flashback setting up the idea that that you can defuse the bomb with dry ice. So, you made the right choice here. Stanley gave Kano a thump on the back, and the detective cracked a tiny grin. What about my choices, though? Debating his own next move, Stanley stepped away from the others and took out his cell phone. He made a call to his superior, Gordon. You missed a lot of context? Oh, yeah, it's fine. Yeah, there's a bomb that we're going to need to stop. And there's also been a dry ice machine that's been referenced throughout the entire game. It's me, he said. What's the situation? I heard the Japanese police want to put Maria Osawa under quarantine. I'm assuming that's on your orders, sir. It is. There's too many innocent people in Shibuya. Can't allow that virus to get loose. Besides, we know now that Alfard is after Hitomi Osawa. There's no reason to leave Maria at large any longer. If you put Maria Osawa under quarantine, she is going to die. I know that, but there will be far fewer victims as a result. Gordon's words made something inside Stanley snap. In that moment, he lost any inclination to report that he was with Maria. Failure to do so would be a dereliction of duty on his part. He knew that well enough. He knew it, but the fact that that fact couldn't overcome his revulsion at Gordon's callous attitude towards Maria. Victims are still victims, he said. What was that? Nothing, sir. I'll continue my operation to apprehend Alfard. Stanley hung up the phone. A bomb, I'm here to kill chaos in the name of the United States of America. He didn't care if his superiors took action against him once this was all over. They intended to sacrifice one person in order to save the lives of countless more. From a purely objective standpoint, it was the right call. But what if that person was a loved one? What would they have done then? Stanley! Jack, buddy. Jackson, bro. You work for the CIA, buddy. You've started coups over less than that. The dilemma gnawed at the back of Stanley's mind. He couldn't shake the feeling that it was wrong to just accept the lesser of two evils, to sacrifice an innocent for the greater good. No, damn it. He would save that one life, and then he would save the lives of the many. He needed to find a way to avoid the so-called easy way out, no matter what it took. He wasn't about to add a second big regret to his life. Not this time. Saving Mario was the right thing to do. His judgment wasn't wrong. Of that, he was sure. He reaffirmed that to himself inwardly over and over. Kano was watching Tatano prepare to depart. The group had put together a reasonable plan of action. Tatano and Kano would head to the lab with Mario and attempt to get the antiviral for her. Stanley would accompany Kano and the others to scramble to apprehend Alphard. It was a two-pronged plan of attack. Still, could they really count on things going as smoothly as Kanon had suggested? Stanley thought back on her earlier words. Once Alphard has made contact with Hitomi, call my cell phone. I have plenty of information Alphard might want to bargain for. I can negotiate with him directly. That meant that getting the password hinged on whatever deal they struck. What sort of things might Alphard request in exchange? Stanley cast a thoughtful look at Kanon. She was helping Tatano to carry Maria out of the room. Stanley doubted she'd answer if he asked just what her bargaining chips were. He held his tongue, watching as she left with the others. Whatever else happened, he needed to focus on capturing Alphard. He glanced around the monitor displays in the workroom. The disembodied sound of Alphard's voice from earlier crept back into his mind. I will appear at the rendezvous in person. After all, it wouldn't do for the star of the show to miss the final curtain. Those words notwithstanding, it seemed absurd that Alphard would actually show up in the flesh. Nationality, age, sex, so much about the terrorist mastermind was shrouded in mystery. Why would someone who had hidden so well for so long reveal their true identity? And yet Alphard had gone out of the way to claim that this was precisely what was about to happen. It almost seemed like he'd made turning up in person a major selling point of the deal. I'm looking forward to meeting all of you then. There was no doubt about it. Alphard wanted them to expect him on site and in person. So why would that be? He's using himself as bait to lure me and Kanon out. This is a near-perfect opportunity to wipe out the two people who are gunning for him the most. That being the case, how might he attempt to kill me once I'm at the scramble? Stanley felt a sudden flash of insight. No. Something was off here. His thought process was running well, each deduction logically following from the last, but at a time like this, that could be a very dangerous thing. Alphard may well have anticipated where his logic would lead. Hi, Benny. Everyone say hi to Benny. Alright, get the fuck out of here. Stanley needed to assume that any clue he had thought he had found was something Alphard had left behind on purpose. So maybe the suggestion that the target would come to the scene was a different kind of trap. At the risk of sending himself in circles, Stanley decided to rethink the whole case from the ground up. What was the single strangest part of this whole thing? Aha! There we go. Why had Alphard put an amateur like Daisuke Endo in charge of the kidnapping? Sure, being able to get a heart for his daughter to save Daisuke was a strong incentive. But there was still had to be a reason why he'd been chosen. If the kidnapping had failed, what would have happened then? Of course, this was Alphard they were dealing with. Maybe the possibility of failure was somehow part of the plan. Hell, Daisuke had managed to accidentally kidnap Maria instead of Hitomi, hadn't he? If Alphard had gone with a professional, that sort of mix-up would never have happened. And yet, even if that degree of uncertainty was acceptable or even desirable, using Daisuke seemed like far too big a risk. There must be some other motive for bringing Daisuke into the plan. Of course. Advantage. Using Daisuke must have provided some important advantage that outweighed his flaws. It was the only thing that made sense. Which meant the reason Alphard had Daisuke carry out the kidnapping was to carry out some other objective. He'd set up the kidnapping, devised the ransom relay, and kept the full attention of the police on that. All the while, Alphard himself was working towards his true goal, getting Hitomi's blood. which meant that Daisuke kidnapping Maria by mistake had in fact been a misstep. That was why, in the end, Alphard had proposed trading the password for Hitomi's blood. Could that really be it? God damn it, Benny. Take a day off. Stanley decided to take it up with the man himself. Mr. Endo, let me ask you something. Did you know Hitomi had a twin sister before the kidnapping? I didn't know. So when did you find out? After I had Maria kidnapped. The organ trafficker took one look at her and said I had the wrong girl. Said I was supposed to have abducted the younger one. He never mentioned Hitomi having a twin sister before all this started. No, if I'd known, I'd been a lot more careful. Alphard had certainly known that the Osawa girls were twins, but despite the added risk that fact implied, he hadn't told Daisuke. There was only one logical conclusion. Daisuke's mistake hadn't been an accident. Alphard had intended for the wrong sister to get kidnapped. By using an amateur, Alphard had set up the police to write off Daisuke's kidnapping of the wrong target as a simple misstep. Had Daisuke been brought in simply in the name of camouflage? But why? Alphard was after Hitomi's blood. Daisuke was after Hitomi's heart. They both wanted the same thing, so why target Maria instead? Stanley's train of logic had run out of steam again. Still, he was sure he was on the right track. He just needed to keep following until he found out where that track would lead. Where's the storeroom where you were keeping Maria? He asked. Daisuke hung his head. It's out behind the shop. Why do you ask? Would you mind showing me? There's something I'd like to check. At this point, he needed to go back over everything right from the beginning. He followed Daisuke out to the storeroom. Speaking of the storeroom, Daisuke said as they were walking to the back part of the building, there's something I've been wondering about. Just how did Maria manage to escape in the first place? You certain you locked her in? Stanley asked. Daisuke nodded. At 8 o'clock this morning, the organ trafficker came by to check up on her. Made sure to lock the place back up after he left. I see. And that visit must have been when Maria was injected with the UA virus. It makes sense based on our working timeline of when we expect her to go symptomatic. When they got to the storeroom, they spotted the padlock that had held it shut lying broken on the ground. Daisuke picked it up and opened the storeroom door. Look at this mess. It was obvious immediately that merchandise had been stolen. I doubt Maria did this, Daisuke said. Maybe some thieves broke in. He made a quick inspection, assessing what had been taken. Some digital cameras and laptop computers were missing. Huh. This looks like the work of some local thugs. This kind of thing has happened to me a few times before. Daisuke let out a sigh of exasperation. Stanley, meanwhile, was carefully looking around inside the storeroom. Where did you have Maria Osawa? He asked. Behind those cardboard boxes. The boxes he indicated were piled high, closing off one corner of the room. If Maria were unconscious behind them, burglars might well have never noticed her. So Maria was able to escape from the storeroom thanks to the burglars breaking the lock, Stanley mused. Just what impact had that stroke of misfortune had on Alphard's plan, he wondered. What had Alphard planned to do with Maria if nobody had broken in? He was going to trade her for Hitomi. It certainly seemed reasonable enough. He needed to kidnap Maria in order to infect her with the virus, first and foremost. And then she had indeed been injected with it at 8 o'clock that morning. Next, Alphard would have carried out a hostage exchange for Hitomi in order to obtain her blood. Maria would be free to go, but infected with UA. What purpose would that serve? It was simple enough to deduce. Once he learned that Maria had the virus, Kenji Osawa would certain to take action. He would bring her to the storage facility in order to administer the antiviral, just as he'd done with Hitomi. That meant the storage facility would be opened once more. That was what Alphard was really after, a way in so he could destroy the antiviral samples at the lab. It was the only logical conclusion. Infecting Hitomi 6 days earlier had ensured that she would be carrying the DDS in her body, but it also served as a sort of dry run for today. If it turned out that Osawa wasn't able to access the antiviral storage on his own, the entire plan would fall apart. Hitomi had been a test case in order to make sure. The negotiations at the scramble were almost certainly a smokescreen. Alphard wanted to lure Stanley and the others to the scramble in order to clear the way for an assault on the lab in the meantime. The first order of business was to stop him from getting inside. But how? Should Stanley leave the stakeout at the scramble for Kano and the others while he headed to the lab himself? He couldn't decide that alone. He headed back to the shop with Daisuke to see where things stood with the others. There we go. Okay. And now we can get to the other Stanley thing from, or Jack. From, Kano's route here. Oh, Kano's all the way back up to bad end here. Okay, that's good. That jumps to Tatano. That jumps to Achi. This was the one that we started on originally, right? That would get us to the very beginning of Jack's route. There was another one in Kano's route, though, right? Like, we saw another one at some point here. We just have to find it again. Was it in Kanon doesn't pick up? There was one more. Like, was it? Huh. Can't let that loose here. And why is that? Because if you do, you'll be infected too. True, but so will all the innocent bystanders around us. A thin smile crawled across Palmer's face. Did you come here to carry out a suicide attack, Mr. Alfard? Hardly. I have no desire to die here. All I want is to get a little of this girl's blood and then go quietly on my way, but that all depends on you, doesn't it? His face was overflowing with confidence. Connor couldn't shake the feeling that something was off here. Something about this man's demeanor hinted at something. Well then, what'll it be? Palmer continued. Will you condemn the people of Shibuya to death? So there was one more, like during this scene, right? There was another way for us to jump to Stanley. It was during this part, right? I haven't missed it, did I? No, I didn't. Okay. This is just going to be the explosion end again, right? Okay, let me look it up. Let me look up where we went wrong here. So we're going to go back to... Okay, so we're going to go back to here. We're going to skip through Stanley being all sentimental here. Because I know we saw another way to jump to Stanley in this at some point. We're going to do just have to trust himself. Okay. Does that change anything down here? Okay, let's go down here. At this point, they couldn't count on Kanan anymore. Let's go here. Okay, so this is the same, but can't let that loose here. This is not okay. Oh, here it is. Decisions that don't seem to actually change anything at first glance, right? But they absolutely do. Hold on. Could it be? Had Stanley not come to the scramble because he knew this was going to happen? There it is. It was after the explosion. If I had just waited a little bit more. Okay. Kano's plan of action for the scramble was steadily coming together. Stanley half listened to the young detective discuss the stakeout with the rest of the group. His own mind was still caught up with the question of what he himself should do. He couldn't shake the conviction that he needed to head to the lab. Even assuming that Alphard really did turn up at the scramble, and assuming that he carried out another bioterror attack there, the worst that could happen would be a disaster in Shibuya. Terrible though that might be, it'd be far worse to let Alphard, who was already in possession of the Uo virus, destroy the world's only supply of the antiviral. If he succeeded at that scheme, his bioweapon would be unstoppable. He could hold the entire planet in the grip of fear. A terrorist arms dealer might never be allowed to obtain that kind of power. Stanley couldn't take that risk. Even if he was wrong in his suspicions, it only made sense to shore up the defense of the lab. There was only one person he could count on now, Kanan. She was the way to the lab already. If Stanley could alert her to his conclusions, it would make that much harder for Alphard to carry out his plan. If nothing else, hopefully she could buy time for Stanley to get there. Stanley approached Kano. "You need to go to the scramble without me," he said. "What?" Kano was visibly shocked. Where's this coming from all of a sudden? "Please, don't ask me to explain. Something else has come up, and I have to see to it." Stanley hated having to do this. He wished he could explain everything. If he made any unusual moves now, though, there was a risk Alphard would pick up on it. There was no telling where the mastermind might be watching. It was better to keep his companions in the dark just in case. "I understand," Kano said. "Do what you have to, and come back soon." "I'm sorry. I wish I could tell you more." "It's all right. I'll find a way to get by." Kano gave him a thumbs up. The sight brought back some painful memories. Up until just a few hours ago, Stanley had instinctively seen Kano as too naive, and now he finally knew why. Kano was just like his younger brother, Frank. Are we flashing back to Frank again? Hell yeah, we are! They might have looked very different, but in the way they mixed up their responsibilities with their personal feelings, they were totally alike. Stanley couldn't discount that naivete. In the end, that was all a part of the human condition. "Hey, Jack, you really okay with this?" Frank cast an anxious look at his older brother as they made their way onto the University of Chicago campus. "It's my responsibility to look after you," Stanley told him. "As long as you take your studying seriously, I'm all for it." Frank had been worrying about tuition costs as he prepared for college. After losing their parents 5 years earlier, the two had struggled to get by. "Yeah, but..." Stanley set both hands on his brother's shoulders. "Listen to me, Frank. You're my brother, and I care about you. I just want want whatever you do to be something you can be proud of. All right, Jack. I hear you. And thanks. Just whatever you do, don't die in an explosion. Thumbs up? Exactly. Kano, promise me one thing. What's that? Once all this is over, you'll go have a beer with me. Sure, all right. That's a promise now. Remember. Kano flashed him a grateful smile. Jack and Frank Stanley, the quintessential Americans, right? Stanley's actor's got some real dollar store Aaron Eckhart energy happening. I know, it's great! And in that smile, Stanley saw the spitting image of his brother Frank. Hurrying up out of Endo Electronics, Stanley dialed up Tatano as he ran along. Okay, so we can jump over to Tatano from here as well. Okay, cool. So that'll break that one. This is all fucked over here, but... Hurrying out of Endo Electronics area. It's Stanley. What's going on? What I'm all about to tell you is mere conjecture on my part, but for now, let's assume I'm mostly on the right track. He took a deep breath and steeled his nerves. I think Alphard is heading to the lab. He's planning on hitting it to destroy the antiviral. Are you serious? Tatano's voice was laced with apprehension. Yes, you need to turn back right away. I'll go to the lab with Kanon. The detective's only reply was silence. Did you hear me, Tatano? This is an opponent who is out of your league. Turn back. I'll handle the... I can't do that. Stanley overcomes racism yet? Sorry, I was kind of in a different window for a bit. I mean, he's not actively being racist anymore, so... I don't know. Can one overcome that in the span of an afternoon? This isn't an Academy Award-winning film, right? You can't solve racism in under 2 hours. My job is to get Maria to the lab as soon as humanly possible. Whether Alphard is coming or not doesn't change that. Don't be absurd. Even if you do have Kanon with you, you can't keep Maria safe and still win the fight that's coming. I'll give my own life to protect that girl if it comes down to it. Stanley could tell that he'd never overcome this degree of stubbornness. Fine. Have it your way, then. But I'm heading to the lab, too. Whatever you do, do not let your guard down. Understood. Tatano would be no match for Alphard. If the terrorist spotted the detective, he'd probably kill him on the spot. Reassurance or encouragement would be meaningless. Instead, Stanley left Tatano with one final warning. How about find some way to stall? Yeah. Find some way to stall until I get there. If he realizes we're on to him, you're done for. Tatano hung up without saying anything. Stanley made it to his car, still parked on the roadside. Jumping in, he sped off toward the laboratory. Traffic had gotten pretty congested by the time he made it out onto the main road. The chaos and panic from the area around Shibuya Station was starting to spread. His frustration steadily growing, Stanley fought his way alongside along the congested streets. Just as his aggravation was beginning to boil over, he finally arrived at the Akoshi Pharmaceutical Laboratory. He could immediately tell that something was wrong. Oh! That's not good! A plume of smoke was rising from one of the laboratory windows. It was thick and black, clearly the result of a fire of some sort. Stanley hopped out of the car, drawing his gun as he approached the door. He was about to make his way inside when a scent on the air stopped him in his tracks. If anyone can overcome his bigotry, it's Jack Stanley of the CIA, and all it takes are some breakthroughs and illegal brainwashing experiments. The smoke carried the telltale odor of explosive residue. He hadn't made it on time. All his fears had come to pass. Maria, Osawa, Tatano, Kanon, they were all surely dead. And no doubt the antiviral had all either been stolen or incinerated. In all likelihood, moreover, viral samples from the lab had already been dispersed by the explosion. Stanley cursed. He'd already inhaled some of the smoke. This really was the worst-case scenario. They'd been utterly defeated. Stanley called up Gordon to request backup for a sweep of the laboratory. He knew that it was already too late to change anything. Even so, Stanley would go through all the motions before he admitted defeat. All right. Well, that didn't work. What happens if we give him a different warning? Will that change anything? Shoot first. What if we tell him to just shoot first, ask questions later? Comes down to it, just shoot him. If you hesitate for a moment, he'll have you dead. Tateno hung up without saying anything. Is this going to change anything? No, it's not going to change anything. Your joke's so awful that YouTube refused to post it? Wow, really? That bad, huh? Let's jump over to Tateno then. Looks like we can't do anything else here. True Americans drive Chevrolets. I mean, yeah, obviously. Obviously. Once they made it past Shibuya Station, the roads were relatively clear. They ought to make it to the lab in no time. Tateno's phone rang. It was Stanley. What's going on? He asked the American. What I'm about to tell you is mere conjecture on my part, but for now, let's assume I'm mostly on the right track. Stanley's voice was filled with tension. Tateno braced himself for bad news. I think Alphard is heading to the lab. He's planning on hitting it to destroy the antiviral. Are you serious? It was even worse than he'd feared. Alphard heading to the lab? Yes, you need to turn back right away. I'll go to the lab with Kanon. Is something wrong? Kanon asked, peering at him from the back seat. He couldn't hide the fact that he was trembling. She seemed perfectly calm, unfazed by the possibility of further complications. Perhaps she had already anticipated something like this happening. Did you hear me, Tateno? Stanley said. This is an opponent who's out of your league. Turn back. I'll handle the... I can't do that, Tateno replied, managing to regain his composure. My job is to get Maria to the lab as soon as humanly possible. Whether Alphard is coming or not doesn't change that. Don't be absurd. Even if you do have Kanon with you, you can't keep Maria safe and still win the fight that is coming. Maybe Stanley was right. Almost certainly he was, but Tateno couldn't put Maria's life in danger by turning back in order to save his own. Kanon! Tateno glanced at the young woman in the back seat. Yes? If Alphard shows up, don't worry about protecting me. Just keep Maria safe. You got it. That was all Tateno needed to hear. I'll give my own life to protect that girl if it comes down to it, he told Stanley. Fine, have it your way then. But I'm heading to the lab too. Whatever you do, do not let your guard down. Understood. Tateno hung up. Oh, so it doesn't matter what advice we give him. He's not going to hear it. Okay. That was Stanley? Kanon asked. She'd probably already surmised the situation. Even so, she showed no sign of concern. At last, the minivan arrived at Koshi Pharmaceutical. Tateno pulled up at the front gate and got out of the vehicle. Off to one side of the entrance was an intercom for contacting the security room. I'm assuming you've already heard the details from the director, Tateno barked into the intercom. Open up. The security guard spat back. That's ridiculous. Tateno scowled at the intercom in frustration. Then a car came racing toward him along the street. Thinking about it now, why do bombs always have a visible timer on them? I mean, it's got to be at least for some of the benefit of the person planting the bomb, right? Right? Like, if you're planting the bomb, you probably want to know how much time you have left, right? The sound of screeching brakes filled the air as the vehicle skidded to a halt, and then Kenji Osawa jumped out from the driver's seat. Maria! Osawa rushed over to Tateno, then to Mario, where she lay in the minivan. He looked carefully at his daughter's face. Oh, thank goodness. She still hasn't gone symptomatic. Mr. Osawa, why aren't people being allowed in the laboratory? Osawa tilted his head. They're not? Tateno explained what the guard had said. That's ridiculous. Osawa immediately called the security guard on the intercom. He got the same story. You've got to be kidding me! Osawa raged. I'm the lab director here! But the security guard wasn't hearing it.
I'm sorry, sir. These orders come from Mr. Makino.
No. So am I just supposed to sit out here and watch my daughter die? Tateno racked his brain for other ideas. Maybe they'd have to climb the gate and break their way in? Then over the intercom, they heard the sound of a phone ringing in the security room. The security guard answered it without muting the intercom speaker. His voice was faintly audible. He sounded rather deferential. Who in the world could he be talking to? Before Tateno could muse further, the gate suddenly opened. Oh, yo, yeah, give me that FMV shit. Huh? Why? Tateno and Osawa looked at one another in surprise.
I have a message for Director Osawa from Mr. Makino.
The security guard said. From Akino. Osawa huddled over the intercom and had a brief sotto voce exchange with the guard. What was that all about? Tateno asked. See, my wife was able to pull some strings for us. Osawa smiled uncomfortably. Tateno didn't have time to wonder what that might mean. Has that lock been opened for us as well? He asked. The smile disappeared from Osawa's face. No. She wasn't able to do anything about the final layer of security. I see. Well, let's regroup inside for now. Very well, Osawa said. By the way, who's going to be hacking the password? I am, Kanan replied. Ah, so you're Kanan. We should get you to the laboratory then. After checking to make sure there was nobody suspicious looking nearby, Tateno headed into the laboratory with the others. It took about 20 seconds for the elevator to reach the first basement level. The biohazard storage area was evidently fairly deep underground. The doors opened to reveal a long, straight corridor. There was a door at the far end with a device at one side for checking IDs. Kanan approached the device, setting the laptop she borrowed for the security room on the floor in front of it. She fixed the scrap of paper with Kenji Osawa's password written on it to one side of the monitor. Then she connected a series of cables to both the laptop and the device. Tateno tried to contain his sense of urgency, focusing on keeping watch over Kanan as she worked. Kanan began to slowly tap away at the keyboard. Her screen displayed a series of numeric values that changed with each keystroke. She checked the changes carefully, timing the movements of her fingers according to some formula. The ID device let out a warning sound, and the display lit up. Incorrect password. Password inputted had been rejected. Was this really going to work? Tateno felt his impatience growing. Osawa's face showed a similar unease. Kanan turned to look at them. How many failed attempts are we allowed? 2, I believe, Osawa answered. After a third failed attempt, the storage area is locked down and can't be reopened without input from the full board of directors. Kanan had already resumed typing before he finished speaking. The very slight difference in power consumption for the device when it processes a correct password compared to incorrect one. There's a minuscule difference in the time it takes to run the process as well. I can analyze those and compare them. Kanan's voice trailed off. She continued working. There was another warning sound. A second failed attempt. A single bead of sweat ran down Tateno's forehead. But Kanan didn't so much as bat an eyelash. Ah, I see. Her face remained full of confidence. It won't be a problem, she assured them. This isn't my first time with this type of mechanism. Slowly, one at a time, Kanan pressed key after key while keeping her eyes fixed on the laptop screen. With each keystroke, a waveform at the top of the screen, looking almost like an echo diagram with readout, wobbled slightly. The laptop let out a tiny sound. A sequence of 10 characters appeared on the screen, and Kanan read them off. Tateno jotted them down in his notebook, then stepped up to the scanner to enter the twin passwords for Osawa and Tanaka. The door opened. Kanan let out a sigh of relief. Osawa gathered up Maria and headed into the storage area. Tateno felt a surge of relief as he watched the two of them go. Kanan, meanwhile, was fastidiously putting away her equipment. What do you think? Tateno asked her. About what? She asked, her gaze as serious as ever. About Alphard. Why hasn't he shown up? If what Stanley had said was true, Alphard might be coming their way. It was both strange and unsettling that they had been able to get inside without any interference. This isn't over yet, Totino continued. Don't let your guard down until we know Alphard has been dealt with.
Right.
Kanon pulled out a pistol.
You keep those two safe, she said. I'll go check things out front.
She got back into the elevator and headed up. Left alone in the hallway, Tateno was enveloped by an eerie silence. He drew his gun from his holster, then went into the storage area to join Osawa and his daughter. His cane and the soles of his shoes echoed on the hard surfaces all around. At the end of the hallway, Tateno came to another door. He took a position there, determined to guard the two individuals inside. This was the only way in. If anyone was coming, they'd have to pass through here. Putting his back to the door, he let out a sigh. A great weight of exhaustion settled over him. Too much had happened over the past few hours. He recalled too many painful memories that had long been buried deep within his mind, and he'd realized that his whole life was rife with things he could never undo. If you're coming, then come on. Tateno aimed his gun down the empty corridor. Right now, he just needed to protect Maria. That had become his life's sole purpose. Suddenly, the door that was in front of him was blown off its hinges with a tremendous explosion. The shockwave after traveling down the corridor struck him an instant later. Tateno had neither the time to wonder what had happened, nor any chance to avert his fate. Well, fuck. Huh. Alright. Well, we are getting no closer to any of this. Tatino, more like Tadetto. Got him. Alright, so... Huh. Huh. I'm just going by what the guide tells me to do here now. So... Okay, so what we need to do next, then, is we need to rethink our initial strategy here, because we were entirely wrong. So what we want to do, we want to go back all the way here, because we were wrong about this, it seems. He wasn't going to trade her for Tomi. He was going to release her at some later time. Since he'd gone to the trouble of infecting her with the virus, it only made sense. And Stanley could only think of one reason to release an infected Maria, to turn Shibuya into ground zero for a pandemic that would sweep through all of Tokyo. A virus with a mortality rate of 100% would have spread throughout the region before anyone even realized it. It would be impossible to even calculate the scope of such a disaster. First, it would run the circuit around the Yamanote line, and then, if any of the infected happened to head to the airports at either Haneda or Narita, the virus would spread throughout Japan and the rest of the world in a matter of hours. But that hadn't come to pass. They managed to secure Maria before she could develop symptoms and become infectious. Is that because we're better than Alphard? No, that can't be it. Alphard wasn't the sort of to commit such indiscriminate acts of terror. The threat of the infection spreading, horrific as it was likely just to cover just cover to hide some other scheme. But then what was his ultimate goal? Stanley still didn't have enough clues to go on. Stanley made his way behind the stack of cardboard boxes. He spotted something that had fallen on the floor. It was a cell phone. Next to it was a woman's handbag. Stanley unzipped it, held out a jumble of makeup, tissues, and other personal effects, but nothing at all unusual. If he was going to find any clues here, it would probably have to be from the cell phone. He tried turning it on. There was no response. It appeared to be broken. Let me see that, Eskay said from behind him. I'll see if I can fix it. Do you think you can? Stanley asked as he handed it over. I won't know until I try, but a sign out front saying that I run an electronics shop isn't just for show. Turning his attention back to the handbag, Stanley searched it more thoroughly and found a photograph tucked inside that he'd overlooked on first inspection. What the hell? He stared at the image, swallowing the lump in his throat. What? Okay, so something entirely different is happening here. Alright. Well, we are much farther away from the end of this game than I thought, so I think what we're going to do is, for the sake of saving my voice and letting me get out of the heat for now, I think we're going to end the stream here for today. So I can go hang out in the room with the AC in it. Fucking sucks out here. Ugh, and also because my voice is getting a little bit raspy, and we got to record more tonight, so gotta keep my voice. You know how it is. Thank you for coming, everyone. I genuinely thought we were going to be wrapped up with this game by now, but apparently not. There's still too many more things happening. I'll be back tomorrow and we'll play more. Also, we'll be starting a new series of Two Queers Play tomorrow. Guess Shibuya just has yet to be unscrambled. You got it. You got it. Tomorrow, we're starting a new Two Queers Play series. We're going to be playing through Steins Gate, Linear Bounded Pentagram. Both Vivian and I are really excited to be back playing more Steins Gate. And from what we've recorded so far, the game is much better than we expected. Like, as much as I love My Darling's Embrace, it was kind of like a, meh game overall. It was really just fan service, right? This one has been a lot better from moment one. And I hope if that interests you, then you'll watch it and enjoy it. That's all I got for you. Have a great day, everyone. I'm going to go back to the cold room and dissociate while looking at maps again. Bye.